Hey guys, just before we get into the tier list video, if you're part of the 54% of people that watch these videos and aren't subscribed, do yourself a favour, hit that subscribe button. I put a TCG video out every single day. Let's get into the fun stuff. Guys, to the Slowpoke, well, and look who we're joined. Oh, actually, I say look who we're joined, but actually can't see who we're joined by. But we've got Joe and Jack from Omnipoke. How are you, my friends?
Good.
Yeah,
Getting a bit bored with not being able to do anything, but that means more Pokemon thinking.
This is very true, very true. And Joe, how are we?
Yeah, I'm good as well. Getting ready for the Rebel Clash stuff now. It's on the doorstep, so.
This is very true. I think as of recording, it comes out next week on TCG, I believe. So that's why I've got these fine gentlemen to sit down with little old me, and we're going to do a little Rebel Clash tier list. We're going to get all these decks. Look at all these decks. Oh my lord, it took me ages to get these little graphics made up as well, guys. So, and we're going to rank these so we can all know ahead of our Limitless event and just our PTTCO ladder crawling whereabouts are the decks we want to play sit. So we're going to get it started straight up here with a nice big juicy one. So Jack, you asked me to put this one in there because I forgot it like an EJAT. But if I had to ask you where you'd be ranking Malamar Dragapult, where would you put it?
Okay, straight off the gate with the new decks.
Yeah!
You've got four different Dragapult lists, and I think the Malamar list is my favourite.
Okay.
I think it's not going to be as inconsistent as Malamar, even though you're running multiple sort of stage ones, because you can just completely rely on the Vmax strat. The Malamars are a real sort of back foot in trying to set up your Dragapults sort of in the mid to late game. Early game, you really don't need a lot of setup, whereas Malamar is a pretty much setup-centric deck in the spell tag sort of build. So I actually think it's really, really strong. I think it's easily the strongest attacker in the new set. I'd probably put it at least at 1, maybe even S tier. I think it's super strong. It has a lot of flexibility in damage spread and control. It's super tanky. And Psychic in general has so many different options with Tina, with Blacephalon, with all of these different options, Esper, all of this different stuff. I think it probably is the front-running Malamar variant, and honestly, potentially one of the best decks going into the next format. I think it's just got a lot of answers to everything, and I think it will probably shape the format somewhat, causing more healing to have to go into decks, maybe more.
Yeah.
Things like Sky Pillar and stuff maybe more considered again. Just things like that. I think it is I think it paves the way for a real new format rather than just doing 260 to your opponent's active with Zacian. I think we could see a lot more spreading and taking multiple knockouts in a turn because of this card, basically. So yeah, I'd put it in probably S or 1 at least.
So Joe, we've just heard Jack talk about why he thinks Malamar Dragapult is tier 1, tier S. Do you agree?
Yeah, I think I echo Jack's sentiment in that Dragapult is just one of the best attackers in Rebel Clash for sure.
Yep.
Malamar's a decent backup for it. It gives you some good coverage against energy disruption if it's just like a tech in certain decks, because energy disruption, as we've seen from like mill players, is a good way around ADP at times. So if it's good against that and straight Dragapult, then having the Malamar to offset it is very nice. Also having some one prize options, like Jack said, the Giratina, the Esper, the Blacephalon, that really helps out against the Baby Blounds matchup, where you have an alternate route of just going one prize against them as well. So I think Malamar, alongside the straight Dragapult, are my 2 personal favorites. I do still have a bit of a issue with the consistency, because you do put a lot of cards in your list, even with like just that 2 or so Malamar line and then like 3 or 4 one prize techs. That still ends up being a lot of spaces, but I do definitely think it's a solid way of playing the deck.
Yeah, that's also echo that. I think Dragapult is so inherently strong. Like you said, Jack, we've got like 3 or 4 variants here, and all of them are going to be at least tier 2 or up, in my opinion. But I don't know, I just think it's so efficient with a 2 energy attack where I don't know if the Malamar is strictly necessary. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you attack for 2 anyway. But then in that scenario, if we are playing Malamar, Jack, are you throwing in your sort of go-to Malamar stuff like an Esper? What sort of stuff are you putting in your Dragapult Malamar list?
I think, like Joe said, I think you don't necessarily have the space to go too techie with it, so it's probably going to be a format-based like format-based decisions, but
Yep.
probably like Baby Blown is just such a strong card when you're kind of forcing a 3-prizer up anyway.
Yeah.
I think Baby Blown is probably the only one that I would have staple, just because I think it's so strong against controlling stuff as well. But yeah, I think it's probably going to be pretty format dependent, and there's probably
Guys, we have a few technical difficulties over here. I'm not even going to try and lie to you. I'm not even going to try and jazz it up nicely in there it is. So, we did catch what Jack was thinking about Dragapult, Malamar. So what would you say there, Jack? We'll go over a little tiny bit. So you said Baby Clowns. I know that was what you definitely said. Anything else?
Baby Clowns definitely. I think Tina is actually one of the weaker ones, just because you don't reliably get Malamars out as consistently as when you're playing a 4/4. So Tina's probably the weakest. I think Baby Blacephalon and Esper are just the two best ones because they synergize so well. There's no point in leading into anything else. I just think you want to take Dragapult's best attributes and try and push on them. So yeah, Baby Clown and Esper would probably be the two I'd play.
Yeah, that seems fair. So, if we're gonna sort of, well, let's actually throw him in the tier list then, shall we, boys? So, I think we're all in agreement. It's definitely going to be at least tier 1.5, right? It can't be lower than tier 1.5, surely.
For sure.
Yeah. Well, I think I'm gonna put him in 1. I'm not 100% convinced it will be the best way to play Dragapult, but like we said, sort of getting on to what Joe was saying, it's so inherently strong. Like, you're gonna win games regardless of where Malamar comes out sometimes. You know what I mean? So I think in that aspect, it's gonna be tier 1. Let's stay in the Dragapult sort of realm now. With the sort of Roxy Dragapult. Joe, what are your thoughts on the sort of more Roxy-based Dragapult?
I think it's very interesting. I like the aggressive approach in that you're attacking your opponent's board even quicker. I like that because Dragapult himself is so low maintenance, you just want to find an energy turn 1, evolve in an energy turn 2, that getting Roxy on top can really help out. And it also makes like other tech cards even stronger, like potential for Zigzagoon or Giratina with scoop up net combos, stuff like that could be like really awesome as well. So I like the option of Roxy. I don't know if it's going to be consistent enough compared to like straight Pult, but I like the extra damage pressure that you put on. You're threatening Jirachis with no worry of people scoop up netting to remove damage counters. You're threatening Dedenes a lot quicker as well, so you're just naturally putting things into range, which is nice. So yeah, I like the option, and it puts less pressure on Horror Energy actually like popping against tag teams and stuff. So I do like its damage buff quite a lot.
Yeah. Jack, have you got any thoughts on your Roxy Dragapult? Have you ever looked at that one?
I mean, pretty much the same. I haven't looked at too many Roxy-based lists, but in my head it just feels like a hyper-aggressive Dragapult, which sounds really good. It as I said in the Malamar, it's an insane attacker. It's super efficient. It's like super tanky as well. So I just think that added level of aggression, like Joe says, is probably going to be really, really strong for being able to Grinch multiple prizes, multiple like 1 prizes very quickly. It probably means like against some tag team things, you really force them into awkward spots where they can't play down a lot of Jirachis or a lot of Absols or anything like that, because you're able to kill their ADP, and then they've got enough stuff on the board for you to be able to take 3 prizes on little stuff. So the aggression sounds really, really strong.
Yeah, that's the sort of thing I've come to as well. If you want to sort of play the most aggressive like style, if you just want to say, right, you put down Grookey, I'm gonna kill it straight away, then this is gonna be the one for you. Because from the testing I've been playing, like you sort of get it to there, with you sort of tag team deck, you sort of Jirachi based stuff, like you are holding that Jirachi, you're thinking, right, if I put this down, there's a good chance it's gonna die, like straight away. So especially with the Roxy version, like that's what you're trying to gear towards. So I do think, no, that all being said, it will be your sort of, dare I say it, the most inconsistent way of playing Dragapult. And with that being said, I think I want to say either 1 or 1.5. What do we think there, Joe? Does that seem fair?
I think 1.5 is probably more fair, just because I'm thinking of when I tried Sable Roxy.
Yep.
And obviously it's slightly different because Sableye has to Roxy or it does nothing, whereas it's not the case with Dragapult. But like, it felt when you're missing the Roxy, you're actually just pretty sad face.
Yeah, that's
so I think there's like, you just accept a slightly lower damage cap and go for straight Dragapult more often than not. But I do like I'll definitely play around with the Roxy build because it just seems very oppressive, to be honest, against certain engines.
Yeah, that's fair.
Definitely.
Right, like I said, we've got a couple more of the Dragapult. Now, here's my baby, okay? Here's the one that I've been putting the most time in. And let me tell you, when you get it set up, now I'm going to preface, you are playing stage 2 now, boys, so you know what I mean? But when you get that Gengar out, oh my lord, you're just laughing at them. Gengar, Dragapult. I'll put a few games into this. And let me tell you the reason why, if you haven't seen the list video, go watch that video. But the reason why I've geared it so much to get that Gengar out, like we're playing a Green's Exploration route, is because once that Gengar comes out, let me tell you, boys, you're laughing. Like, go on then, what are you going to do? Move this damage off, scoop up, see you later. But like I said, with that being said, we are playing a stage 2, and if you want to build your deck around a stage 2, I wouldn't blame you for not wanting to do that. But Jack, have you ever thought about Gengar Dragapult? Is that something that's popped into your head?
It feels like the Exodia build of the Dragapult builds. It feels like, you say, once you get set up, it's pretty insane. Scoop Up Net is another insane card in the set, and you're leaning into 2 really, really good cards then. Gengar has an ability that is less flexible than Reuniclus, but Reuniclus was a pretty strong card when it was around.
Yeah.
And Dragapult is tanky enough to be able to make up for the fact that damage has gone up, because it's actually pretty rare that your Dragapult's going to be getting one-shotted. So
Yeah.
you're leaning into 2 really good cards. Like you say, it's a stage 2, and I think it's probably the least consistent.
Yeah.
But
Oh yeah.
it does feel very, very strong. And again, another hugely beneficial of these Vmax cards is their incredibly high HP, and you can really, really take advantage of that. So I can see it. I don't think it's as consistent as the other builds we've spoken about so far, but I can see it being the, like I say, Exodia build, and the build of people's choice, just because it develops some pretty unwinnable board states in certain situations. So yeah, it's probably not going to be as good as the other 2 for consistency's reasons, but as a power level, provided everything goes your way, it seems really, really strong.
Yeah, that's a pretty good way of putting it there, Jack. Joe, have you thought of any Gengar Dragapult?
I mean, the thoughts come into my mind, and I like the option of, even playing Scoop Up Net for guaranteed on Nala Prism Star for healing 150 or something for free and just dropping it back down. Like, that sounds really cool, but I'm very worried about playing a stage 2 in a meta where Lysander's back. So
yeah,
that would be my biggest concern.
No, that's fair. That's completely valid as well. Yeah. I mean, I think like sort of Jack was alluding to, the power level is just insane. But like I said, it is getting there, and I think as much as I do love it, and I feel as if it could be a very big pet deck on the channel, I probably don't think it's the best way. But like I said, if you want a high roll though, if you want to say, right, 5 games, at least 3 of these games Gengar's coming out, and then that 4th game I'm just going to try and win a Dragapult alone, if you're willing to take that risk, then yeah, feel free. With that being said though, the tier, this is going to be a hard one, because my heart wants me to put it at 1.5, but the head is saying, Shay, it's a stage 2, and you know how these stage 2s treat you these days. I think I'm probably going to put it in... Oh, can I put it in 2? Joe, where would you put it? Just out of interest.
Lower than 2.
Lower than 2? Well, I ain't put it lower than 2. I ain't doing that. Jack, where would you put it?
I've got it between 2 and 2.5.
2.25.
We'll go. Down 1 tier.
Drop it down 1 tier. Well, I've sort of been outvoted here then, lads. 2 people are saying bring it lower, so we're going to have to put it down to 2.5. But let me tell you, that's going to be the strongest 2.5 deck, Right, let's move.
It probably is, to be fair. Looking at some of the other 2.5s I've chosen, it probably is.
Right, let's have a gander. Jack, I'm going to let you pick the next deck, baby. Which deck do you want to talk about next?
The next deck, okay.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the lightning stuff. Let's talk about Pikarom and Boltund, because you've split these up, and I can understand why.
Yep.
And I think for a tier list, it's pretty fair to split them up. But I think in general, we're going to be seeing a lightning box style deck come out of the woodwork. That's potentially going to include both of Boltund and Pikarom.
Okay.
I don't think Boltund fits into the Pikarom style, and I don't think Pikarom fits into the pure Boltund style.
Yeah.
So I think we could be seeing a lightning box style deck. So that's kind of what I've looked at with Boltund.
Okay.
Pikarom as a deck, I don't think it gains too much getting Lysander is really, really big though.
Mm.
Being able to Lysander to on and then Tag Bolt. Tag Bolt is already insanely strong.
Yeah.
The format is kind of very, very fast right now. So sometimes you don't have time to Tag Bolt and you're reliant on the Choo-Choo strategy. But if you can Tag Bolt, having access to Lysander along with the Tag Bolt is, I think, incredibly strong. It means that you can, if you're not winning the game outright, you're able to pick off what your opponent doesn't want you to be Tag Bolting, because they're probably going to be seeing it coming and then probably take a Dedenne at the same time.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think Pikarom still stays pretty strong. I think it's probably beginning to get outclassed in terms of HPs, which maybe means that even that is not enough. But I think it's still probably like a tier 1.5 deck, at least in my eyes, just because it shouldn't lose any consistency. You should have theoretically access to better Tag Bolts now, and that's the selling point of the card. So I think that's kind of what I've thought about when it comes to the Lightning stuff. Turbo Bolt, and I must admit I haven't thought too much about. Me and Joe have chatted about it a little bit, but I haven't thought too much about the archetype outside of that. But in my mind, the two cards are very, very different. One of them, they're just very different decks.
Yeah.
So I can see why you've split them up, but I can also see a third sort of Lightning Box style archetype come out that maybe uses some of the other sort of different lightning attack as well, because lightning is another type.
Yeah.
So it has so many resources. Thunder Mountain is the best Prism Star Stadium we have. Coco is probably one of the best Prisms we have. So it has, again, so much like access to so much, and Toxicity is another new really nice attacker for it. So I can see some kind of Lightning Box coming out of the woodwork. But yeah, they're my thoughts on Lightning and Pikarom in general.
Okay. When it comes to Turbo Bolton, that's actually, I think, time of recording, that's one I put up yesterday. So when I've been playing with Turbo Bolton, I didn't think there was much synergy with Pikarom, like you said, in the sense that you can't just slam into the Bolton deck because it's a bit expensive. 3 straight lightnings, 150, and it gives up 3 prizes because I'm playing like an Electro type version as well. You don't really have a 3 prizer down. With that being said, I do have a Alolan Raichu in there, Raichu, just to sort of help to hit your Vmaxes. So I can see what you're saying about how they don't sort of go in together. But in regards to a big mash-up lightning bot, that does seem quite interesting because you get lots of like Coco V. That's still around. That's still a nice, easy, 200. Joe, what are your thoughts on some of the new lightning stuff?
I really love Speed Lightning Energy. I think it's crazy card. Anything that gives Pikarom a little bit of extra percentage points of getting a turn 1 full blitz is crazy. I like that Jack mentioned Tag Bolt as like a renewed selling point, and I think you get to Tag Bolt against every Dragapult list as well because they just don't pressurize you enough. So that's really good as well. So I think Pikarom looks very solid still. Getting Lysander helps out against beating Mill, which has been one of its Achilles heels of this format as well. And that all just looks very promising. So I think Pikarom is still pretty high tier for me. I think it's tier 1. It seems very solid. Even like it doesn't gain a lot, but it's like 6 cards that goes into the list, and it's spaces that go into the deck as well. Because Pikarom needs space.
Like, even just drawing 2, though, like you said, like, because when I first saw Speed Energy, I was like, okay, this is good, you can't Coco it, how good is this really? But after playing, I'm like, whoa, draw 2, this is stupid! Like, it lets you, like, Volkner and get a little bit of draw, that sort of stuff. And it all adds up, it all adds up.
Pikaром's first turn, it's a combo deck, so it's, like, so strong for that.
Yeah, and like you said, against stuff like Dragapult, like you are going to get a full blitz mostly. And if they like Vmax and you've hit them for 150 already, if you can then, I'm going to say Guzma then, if you can boss his orders like a benched V, plus power, Tag Bolt killed active, and then start that 5-5 turn, ooh! And that doesn't sound too hard to do either, let's be honest. So, yeah, you've sold me there on Pikarom. I'll put that firmly into tier 1. That sounds good. What about Turbo Bolton, Jay? You giving that any thought?
Yeah. The way I tried to build it was kind of Bolton Coco-esque, where you try and use your Prism Stars and leverage those in the early game to make Bolton be like early pressure. And then you're trying to put excess attachments onto Cocos in the like throughout this process, so you at least have some late game pushes. Maybe try and get over a Dedenne or something to close out games and stuff. I think it lacks a bit of damage output in comparison to other things. But it seems consistent and reasonable as like a pressure deck. So like tier 2.5 or something, I wouldn't put it lower than that just because it'll get onto the board and work every game that you play it.
Yeah, that's the sort of what I found. I mean, my sort of list is a bit different to yours, but I try and use like an Electrode late game, mid-late game. We've combined that with a Stamp, take a big swing KO, and then use Zayora's Jet Sack early game. But like with that being said, playing the deck, it sounds really good on paper to me. And I mean, I'm a big enthusiast as well, don't get me wrong, optimist when it comes to this sort of stuff. But I found as if you sort of sit in that 5 to 8 energy range. And unfortunately, in past formats, that would have been fine. But like now, 5 to 8, you're not really... If you put in 5-8 energy on the board and you're not taking one-shots, you're sort of like, well, what's the point? But with that all being said, I think 2.5 for now does seem solid. Because it is going to win games just by going, have this 10 energy occasionally. That will happen. So, Turbo Bolt. And I've got high hopes for that, boy. But... I don't know. Even the optimist in me, maybe because I'm getting older now, I'm getting jaded, but that seems good. Let's stay in the lightning area. Now, here's something I heard not too long ago, which I didn't even think of. So obviously you've got Toxicity Vmax, okay, Gmax for that all seems well and good. Then someone was like to me, what are you playing the Vmax for? The baby one, the 90 plus 90, is just as good. So Joe, is that something you thought about? A straight baby Toxicity V deck?
Honestly, I haven't thought about it, and 180 is not the number that it used to be. So, if I was gonna play anything like that, it's the Toxicity VMAX or bust, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Like that sounds as much work or more work than Bolton, and less consistent and more expensive. So, I don't think Baby Tox is ever a deck for me.
Okay, I'm glad we sort of had a bit similar mindsets here. Jack, any thoughts on the baby V?
Yeah, I mean, it feels like a dumbed down VMAX, which is obviously what they wanted to do, and I think in this case it's actually worked out for the VMAX, because I think the payoff of the VMAX is the 140 extra HP or whatever you get, which is and the extra 80 damage or however much it is. So yeah. I think it's just outclassed by the VMAX. Again, it's in my mind with this kind of lightning box style deck, you could probably play one or something, but you need to find a way of poisoning then. So I don't know, it feels that like the card alone, it feels kind of weak. I think the VMAX is a stronger archetype to build around.
Yeah, I'm glad we all came to agreement there. This, you know what? Just for that person's cheek, it's going to be our first LOL deck. I didn't think there'd be many LOL decks, but that's where that's going. Now, let's stay... Like, if we are going to play Toxicity V, let's get the big geezer out. Gmax Royal. Oh, boy. Now, when I first saw Gmax Royal, I thought, okay, it's good. Doesn't quite hit silly numbers that I want it to. Is it consistent? Because you have to get a double stage one, because I was going down Garbodor route. I'm not really feeling Koga's Trap, not going to lie. But after playing it, oh, boy... Toxicity VMAX is a hardcore HP slapper. Oh my lord, he gets some work done. Joe, what are we feeling about a straight Toxicity VMAX deck?
Yeah, I think, like you said, it slaps. When you're there, and you just need like one E-power to push, it's like a pretty good feeling. Yeah. And he doesn't remove any energies from himself. Yep. He's just like, I am here, I have over 300 hit points, I'm taking 5 prizes, and then I'm like using anything to gust for game later. So it's a lot of work, and I think that will not make it a tier 1 archetype, but I think its damage output puts it up there. I think as long as there's tag teams that's a focus, and as long as there's VMAX as a focus, he's got a really good chance. I just don't think the list can naturally compete against Mill. I don't think it can compete against Baby Blounds. Those sorts of things that will throw it down the tier list, but against everything on a level playing field prize-wise, it's going to be really, really good. Yeah,
it gives you a fair game there. Jack, have you given much thought to Toxicity VMAX?
Yeah, I mean, it seems really strong. I don't think it's quite as flexible as Dragapult, but it's probably, like you say, it's just probably harder hitting, and that might be enough to keep it on a par. It has, in my mind, another really big thing is it has a relatively, like we've said, a relatively safe way through a lot of these multiple prizes, because you're not bothered about the HP. The only HP that you can't reach sometimes, I should say, is some of the VMAX stuff. And at that point, you have Electro Power. You're one of the only types that can scale, and you can probably scale the best out of any type. So you're going to be running 4 E-Power anyway. So I think even against the stuff that you can't normally reach, you can still reach. So yeah, it seems maybe not quite as strong as Dragapult for me, just because I think Dragapult is probably more versatile.
Yep.
But I think it's probably tier 1.5, just because, again, as we've said, it slaps hard, and it seems like it can, once you're set up, it can just basically do nothing for the rest of the game. You're just announcing an attack every turn and putting your opponent on a clock.
Yeah, that's it. Joe, do you think? I'm sort of thinking the 1.52 range as well. Is that where you're sitting in there as well?
Yeah, I'm dead in that range. Like, even if you miss like Garbodor, you're still hitting 160.
That's it.
So that's super solid. You can tech in like one Koga's Trap just as like an Eldegoss option.
Yep.
As well, if people want to gust and kill your Garb in the mid game. So it's like you can punish people in all sorts of ways. So the deck seems good as a. It is a multiple prize deck, so I think I keep it at 2. But like, I really respect it as like fulfilling its role.
Yeah, I think I was gonna put it in 2 as well, because at the end of the day, you are a double stage 1 deck, and you have to get 3 energies on. But let me tell you, Pete, like we said, we've got electric powers to scale up. If you don't think was it 240 hits is enough, you've got electric powers. And when I was playing it, I completely forgot the poison ticks add up. Like, if they throw anything in the active, you just poison that straight away, and it will build up a couple turns. So yeah, it can reach those silly numbers. And like I say, it's a hardcore HP slapper, baby. I'm a big fan of that. Right, let's have a little gander. Let's keep in the big hardcore HP slappers. Sandaconda, let's go there. Right, Sandaconda. Now, I'm not even gonna lie to you guys. I didn't even think about Sandaconda until I watched this man's right here's set review, and I was like, okay, 220. Yeah, that's a decent number. Gets Dynasty support, and then they've got that first energy attack as well, which is super clutch, by the way. Like, let's not sleep on Sand. I'm not sure how it got translated into English, but Sand is quite funny. I'm a fan of that. But again, we're in that stage 2 route. But I think out of all the stage 2, that this one does slap hard as well. Go check out the list if you haven't seen it, guys. Just to take out the Vulpix, I forgot Ninetales V is a basic, silly me. Joe, have you given much time and thought to Sandaconda? Where do you think it sits?
I've given it possibly too much time and thought.
Yes.
I think it's all right. I share the same sentiment as I did with the Gengar, right? I don't want to be too committed to a stage 2 line in a Lysander format ever. Yeah. I do like the early tempo attack from Sandaconda. You put a little bit of poke damage in against a tag team, and you're ready to knock them out on the second turn without the need for the rare candy.
That's it,
and that's something that I've always hated, like the Vikabulus and all of those sorts of decks, because like you whiff candy, you're a terrible deck.
Yes.
And this deck is still good if you have a slow turn 1, basically, and that's like such a good bragging right that this deck can have, at least when you're going second. So that's a big relief for the deck. I like that you can play different types in the deck as well, so you can naturally hit for relevant typing against multiple decks. You're hitting for Pikarom and you're hitting for Zacian, Copper those sorts of decks as well, so you've got some good coverage at your disposal. Good acceleration. Discard acceleration is pretty busted. The damage output sometimes is a little bit subpar, which is annoying. Like sometimes you're relying on Dojo and being behind and stuff like that. But it does make your opponent play differently at spots, so that's also like a little intricacy of the deck. I don't think it's really like higher than tier 2, but I think it's a pretty nice setup deck overall.
Yeah. So I couldn't agree more. Being a sort of stage 2 deck that isn't so disastrously reliant on the stage 2, like one of the games I've been testing, like if they try, let's say you get one, was it Roly Coly it's called, if they like try and boss as orders that, you're like, lol JK, here's another manual for the turn, bang, here's your 220. So like you're a stage deck that isn't so reliant, and that's just so refreshing in one of these decks to be like, oh, I missed Roly Coly, or I missed Rare Candy, like oh well, I can still do a big slap instead. Like, oh, it's so good. Jack, what do you think about Sandaconda?
I think it seems pretty good. I mean, I think the biggest selling point for me is probably the type options it has. Like you say, you're hitting for fire weakness and fighting weakness, which hits all of the lightning decks we've just talked about, plus all of the metal decks that got all of the support last set, plus all of the grass stuff that you're naturally weak to. Not that I don't think much of it's relevant, but even so, like you're covering at least 3 types there, which is really good. I think, as a kind of a side note, I think this is how stage 1s will have to be. I think this is the only way they can push stage 1s. Is building them in such a way where they're used as a real support rather than the backbone of the deck. Like Vikaboodoo,
Yes.
they're used as a supporting card in this instance, whereas Sandaconda doesn't need Colossal to be good. That being said, it's just, I don't know, maybe I think it's like tier 2.5 probably at best. Because I think it probably doesn't have any great gimmicks. Its gimmick is damage output, which is great. But it sometimes doesn't scale, like Joe said, without things like Diancie and the Stadium and stuff like that. It doesn't have prize cheating like some of the spread decks do, or ADP does, or anything like that. It just feels like a pretty fair deck, which might be good enough because you hit a lot of types, but might also not be good enough just because fair isn't good enough anymore. You need to be
that's it.
broken. You need to be ADPing into 260 for 4 prizes or whatever. You need to be doing something more than just that. That being said, though, another thing is I think it's probably a really, really good budget deck coming into the format.
Okay.
It teaches a lot of different options. It's got V Pokemon to learn about those. It's got abilities and stuff like that. So I think it's probably one of the best budget decks that can compete with some of these strong archetypes like Pikarom and Toxtricity. So yeah, it feels very fair, but fair might be good enough with a good matchup spread to maybe break into the format.
Yeah. No, I think you hit the nail on the head there. Yeah, fair, but is fair good enough? That's the question. Maybe 2 formats ago, maybe. But yeah, I'm a fan on this Sandaconda. I am a fan. I feel as if only you could reliably use dojos, but I've tried the list with dojos, and you really missed that Viridian Forest, let me tell you. That Viridian is super nice. I tell you, imagine if Strong Energy was still around. Now we'd be talking.
Yeah, I think Strong would probably break a deck like this.
Yeah.
Because Strong, like Sand Crowning for 50 and attaching 70 with Diancie, that is nuts.
That's what I like, though. I like my fighting types to be bonkers, Jack. With that being said, as much as I do love Honest Sandaconda, I can't really put it. If I've got Gengar Dragapult in tier 2, I can't put it in tier 2. So I'm going to put him in tier 2.5 for now. Like you said, you got a good matchup spread. You know, if you hit the right matchups and you sort of know what you're doing, you might be able to do well. But I think that it hasn't got that same oomph like some of the decks above here got. Like, you know what I mean? I can't put it in the same tier of Toxicity. Like, come on now. But I'm a fan, though. I'm a fan. Like, it's a good budget deck, and I will be playing a lot of Sandaconda because he's a boy. He's a boy. Right. Let's have a gander. Joe, I'll let Jack pick a deck. Joe, I'm going to let you pick a deck. Go on, Joe. Which one do you want to talk about?
Let's talk about Turbozation, I guess.
Yes, okay.
Obviously, Zacian's still crazy. Nothing's changed there.
Yep.
I think one thing when I look at ADP Zacian, I'm a little bit concerned about the lack of tempo that it has going into a Vmax format.
Yep.
It kind of gets away with its lack of tempo currently because you go, I'm doing nothing, dead, I've won.
Yep.
And against the Vmax meta, that's not always the case, and you can start slipping far behind. So the way Tempozation tries to keep up with the meta is that if you're up against Vmax decks, now you're threatening knockouts on them before they evolve, which is obviously insane. You can remove energy attachments that way and keep up in a prize race, which is insane.
Yeah.
I think the reason why Turbozation hasn't currently worked in the format is because ADP is like still just the go-to, but there's now an alternate way to cheat prizes, which you've got on there, which is the Scoop Up Net Jirachi Prism.
Oh yes.
Gimmick, of course, like it's been a gimmick this whole time.
You're talking about gimmick like I haven't got 3 videos on the channel about this already.
Now you can free up your bench space to actually make it a thing.
Yes,
and Scoop Up Net is generally like an excellent card for a deck like this naturally.
Yes.
Which is really, really cool. So, like, you're already playing a Rangaroo in every Zacian deck. So putting in a Jirachi and a Mr. Mime, and then your Scoop Ups that are already quite good just for using like Mind Report Mewtwo and stuff like that, just makes sense. So you can have the same benefits that ADP has against control decks and against fellow one-prizer decks. So I like that you can now cheese people with some Jirachi Prism action. So I'm actually really excited to get testing Turbozation. I certainly like the option, and I've played plenty of games of ADP Zacian, where I've had to go Zacian route anyway.
Yes.
And I know that it's possible. So just having it more streamlined, directed towards that route is really, really cool.
Yeah. Jack, have you given much thought on Speedzation?
I think I'm gonna echo basically what Joe said. I think it gets a lot better because you have more consistent gimmick, which is probably like enough to compete with some of these bigger decks. I initially wasn't too sold on it because like ADP is so far the king of this format, but and like the more I've thought about how Vmax has changed the game, it definitely you need to. Zacian is such a good card; it will probably never be a bad card, but you need to look at different points of the card. You could Intrepid Sword on your first turn and then ADP, whereas now you probably need to Intrepid Sword to try and get 4 or 5 energy in the early turns to try and win, like we say, that way. I am interested to see how consistent the Jirachi Prism Star is, because I haven't done much testing with it myself. So that is my biggest question. If that's fairly consistent, then I actually don't see why an aggressivization deck can't work. We saw it do okay last week in the Limitless Open, and as Joe said, there's ADP games where you don't even put an ADP down sometimes, and Zacian wins off of its own back just because it's such a good card. So I don't see it being below tier 2 just because you're basing it around one of the best attackers they've ever printed. Whether it's better than ADP Zacian, whether it's the new way to play Zacian, I don't know. The ADP is still a very, very big tempo swing the turns after you've done it. It's one that I'm really not sure on, but I can see the more I talk about it, the more I convince myself that Turbozation is just good because you're powering up the best attacker they've ever printed quickly and winning the game that way. And you can win it even faster with Jirachi Prism Star. You have different consistency options with Scoop Up Net and Mind Report Mewtwo, like we've said. All of these one prize techs that you can play. That sounds really, really good. And even though Scoop Up Net is an insane card, it's one of the only decks that I think it easily goes in for a huge benefit. I think Scoop Up Net will be insane during its lifespan of the format, but I don't think it's been broken. It's a card that will be broken 100 times over, probably in Mill 100 ways over. But this is like the attacking variant I see it in, and I've really convinced myself, especially just talking about it now, that it sounds really, really strong. Just powering up a very good attacker and winning before these Vmax decks can get set up.
Yeah, that's it. Like I've played a lot of Speedzation like before, and now, like you said, being able to like Mind Report, awesome. Being able to potentially reuse Jirachi, that's a bit greedy, but it can be done. What was I going to say there? And like you said, like if you let like Dragapult or VMAX deck go first, and they only get one of their V down, you're like, boopsie that later. If you can get a turn 1 Brave Blade, what are they going to do? And you can play stuff like the Guillotiner as well to take off horrors or speeds. Like I think it could be. I don't know if it's necessarily the best way to play Zacian moving forward, but I'm really passionate about a bit of Speedzation. I do love it. Being able to just Intrepid Sword to energy turn 2, turn 1. Like, yeah, go on then. Now what? You know what I mean? Like, what are you gonna do? So, yeah, and obviously I've been a fan of Jirachi Prism for the longest of time. Like I said, I've got 3 videos on the channel already. Like I love me a bit of Jirachi Prism, baby. So, but with that all being said, I heard some tier 2s about there. I think. What do you think, Joe? I think tier 2 for now. I need to see sort of if it is. Like, obviously, it's competing with ADP now. Like we said before, it probably wasn't at an equal playing field. But now, like, it's sort of questionable. Like, is this the best way to play Zacian? I don't know. And until that question's answered, I can't really put it higher than tier 2. But I don't feel comfortable enough putting it in tier 2.5 either. Does that sound about right to you?
I would definitely put it in tier 1.
Tier 1? Oh my lord, really? Jeez.
Like, if there was a tier 1.S here, I'd probably put it there.
Wow, really? Not okay.
About playing Civilization. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm very skeptical at playing ADP Zacian going forward.
Yeah,
I want to be more tempo based in this evolving format and punishing people for sure.
Yeah, it does seem super slow, doesn't it? Like, turn 1 energy, turn 2 auto creation. No, you ain't got time for that no more now. Like, that's not a thing anymore, lads.
like Dragapult VMAX, they can over 2 turns take that 1 prize knockout on a Jirachi and take that 3 prize knockout on ADP, and then you just don't have enough turns in the game to win anymore. So you need to be faster. I think this is the best way to play Zacian personally. I would probably put it in S or 1. Yeah.
Right, I'm gonna leave it in 1. As a Speed Station believer, I can't quite put it in S though. As much as I am, I can't put it in S. But for now, I'm gonna leave it in 1. But that does seem quite good. We mentioned ADP a little bit. It might as well stay in the Zacian. The sort of ADP Zacian sort of topic, I guess. Yeah, I just think the sort of ADP, if it's gonna have to change. I think it's just way too slow now. You can't just be, like I said, turn 1 attach, turn 2 auto creation. Like I said, Dragapult just damaging counters everywhere at this point. You know, all sorts of stuff's going on. And I'm not convinced by ADP anymore. Jack, do you sort of feel the similar way there? Like, we know what Joe thinks, or he said it earlier, but what do you think about ADP? Do you think it can compete still?
Altered Creation is so strong. It's so strong.
Yep.
And making Zacian do 260 is obviously, again, really, really strong. But we're moving away from 270, 280 being the number anymore. It's now 320, 330. And that probably bumps it down. If we're putting ADP, if we're putting Turbo Zacian in 1, I don't know whether Turbo Zacian is better because I can't say personally I've tested it and I wouldn't want to just give an opinion. In my mind, I don't know how much like ADP Zacian is still super consistent in my mind, and I don't know whether that consistency means it can be dragged down super far, because you're probably still one of the most consistent decks and a really, really strong pressure deck. So I'd be reluctant to put it any lower, lower than 1.52 area. But I can see where this format is not anywhere near as good as the format that it's in right now for being able to be aggressive. The selling point of the deck is Zacian can trade up, and can trade up very, very well. Not only can it trade up prize-wise, but it trades up damage-wise. It's such a good attacker. It's honestly one of the best cards they have ever printed. Yeah. And whilst it still is, it was because of the meta it was in. And with 320, 330 being the number now, it can't reach that damage cap. So you're going to be wasting damage if you're having to two-shot stuff, which means why are you playing the ADP? Because you're wasting more damage technically, because you're doing an extra 30 for no real effect, and then wasting an extra 30, so you're wasting 60 damage plus whatever you overkill by. So it's definitely not anywhere near as good. I'm scared to put it too low, like I say, because I think it's super consistent at doing what it does. I mean, this format, whilst it's a different format, we were looking at some stats, and it's taken 45% of CP tournaments this format, which is nuts. Yes, the format's been a considerably shorter because of what's happened, but that being said, it's still nuts. So I think I'd put it in 1.5, maybe out of fear of underestimating it, maybe out of just wanting it to still be good, because all I've played this format is ADP Zacian. But I think yes, the tempo loss is worse now that these Vmaxes come out, but you're still super good against pretty much the rest of the Vmax is the only thing that scares me really. Yes. All of the Mewtwo variants, all of the other decks in the format, I feel it still has a very, very good shot at. So I think if we go down the Vmax route, which it looks like we're going to, it's probably maybe even tier 2, 2.5, but it still should clean up the majority of the rest of the format, I think. So I'm going to say 1.5 for ADP.
Okay, that seems fair. That seems fair. Joe, let me riddle you this. So if we agree that ADP Zacian might not be the best way to go, I've seen some lists that are leaning really into the Copperaja VMAX route. Do you feel as if that's some way? I mean, I don't think I've got Copperaja ADP as its own deck here. I have got Copperaja, but something slightly different. Do you feel as like an ADP list where you lean more into the Copperaja could potentially give it a new breath at all, or?
Yeah, I think sneaking in a 1-1 line into ADP Zacian sounds very reasonable. It can help the mirror match, and it can help against things that just have that slightly lower damage cap, like the Pikaroms and stuff like that as well, because Copperaja just becomes similar to how Toxtricity gets at a certain stage in the game. It's just going slap, slap,
Yeah.
and like the game's over no matter what. So, and it's really, really good when Lysander's in the format to have a card that just sits on board, lives, and then like you don't need to do anything next turn other than like boss for game.
That's
So
it. Yeah.
I mean, I would put ADP Zacian in the same tier as Turbo Zacian. I'd either put them both in S or I'd put them both in 1, no matter what you want to do.
Oh wow. Okay.
I think, yeah, like Jack said, this Dragapult is a new contender to the throne or whatever, and it's gonna be a bit of a hiccup from the normal game plan of just GX and start swinging. You got to play a little bit weirder sometimes, but it's nothing that ADP Zacian can't handle. I definitely put it 1 minimum. It's like, if it's not the best deck in format, it's like the second best
Still
at
up there.
worst.
Yeah. See, even just starting to talk about it, like at the start, I was like, "Oh, no, the deck's always." But I'm thinking to my head, well, all you have to do is like KO a baby V 2 times. Like that's not too hard. Like you've got bosses orders now, just KO a V, KO the Dene. That's not, So yeah, like you said, and like we said as well, against everything that's not a Vmax, we are still going to be hardcore slapping. So yeah. So
it's still fine. And
that's it. Yeah.
Decks, you still want to have Alter Creation, right?
Yeah. And at the end of the day, what I've learned about ADP, taking extra prizes can just win you games on its own. Just be being silly. Like let's say we play against Dragapult and they miss a VMAX. Like, oh, whoops, here's 3 prizes. I'll have that. And then there's a Dene later on. I'll have that as well. So So now I'll come full circle saying ADP is rubbish, and I'm thinking to myself, okay, it's actually not too bad. It's not too bad.
Yeah, chill, guys.
Yeah, that's it.
It's another deck that I think it's so consistent in its own right that it punishes people for being inconsistent as well. Like if anyone misses a beat, like you've just said, if they miss the VMAX, if they miss an attachment and don't do enough, you're going to be having to deal with 260 every single turn from then on. That's probably like best case scenario. Worst case scenario is they're getting ultimate raise and still taking prizes and setting up their board even further. So
that's it.
Like it punishes stuff for missing beats as well. So yeah, I just think that even though like the tempo loss is scary, there's only 2 or 3 decks that you're losing tempo against. You're still so good against the rest.
Yeah, no, that's it. So yeah, I'm gonna leave it in 1. Right, let's have a gander. Oh, this is interesting. So, speaking of ADP, we saw this sort of deck do super wide and limitless tournament. I think Ross Core for one, I'd like to say. ADP Spirit Team, if I'm not mistaken, right? That's what he was playing? Yeah? Is that now, obviously, being Dark Type, Dragapult, if Dragapult's going to be the new format leader, being Dark Type's nice. Obviously, being being the sort of the way Spirit Team works, spreading damage counters might not be the best way to go. But I remember someone saying that he just need 3 damage counters and a hustle band to one-shot a Dragapult. I mean, you can do that in a turn. So, to be fair, it's not like that I've heard about it before. I think it did well in Asia, last format, if I'm not mistaken. I haven't given it much thought now, and obviously it's resurged. And obviously, being a Dark type, it could be a card that people flock to just to try and counter Dragapult. Joe, do you give ADP Spirit 2 much credit moving forward?
Yeah, I've played it all week, and I think it's really solid. I like that it can be a foil for Dragapult. Obviously, there's a bit more nuance to you just like benching the Spiritombs because you get punished like massively. But when you play similar to Ross's build, where he played 3 Jinx, you can just drop the Spiritomb in the same turn, knock out a Dragapult for 1 attachment, and that shouldn't really be happening, right? That's pretty insane.
Yeah.
So I like the typing. I like the 1 priziness. So yeah, the archetype seems super solid to me. Going forward, it looks pretty good.
Yeah. Jack, anything to add? What do you think about Spirit 2?
Yeah, I mean, I echo all that. It's like this deck's come out of the woodwork around 3 weeks before it actually gets busted, and it's already pretty good.
Yeah,
so,
yeah, that's fair.
I think it's really, really strong. The fact that it's such a glass cannon against Dragapult is kind of scary, but if I think if you're able to play it correctly, if you're able to not get baited into doing silly stuff like wasting your Spiritombs, you should be completely fine with that matchup. You are trading 1 for 3, like that's insane. Like Joe said, you shouldn't be able to do that. Think about the next best deck that can do that. That's Baby Blacephalon that needs 7 energy in hand to trade 1 for 3, and you're doing it for 1 energy in a turn. So Yeah, it seems really, really strong. Obviously, Ross did well with it this weekend, so it might even still be a good, strong competitor for like events over the next few weeks. But
Yep.
I think it probably only gets better from here because the typing is just so strong against what looks like to be one of the front runners of the next format.
Yeah, no, that's completely fair, completely fair. So if we had to rank it then, lads, Jack, where are you saying?
Probably 1.5.
Yep.
I think it maybe can struggle with a couple of other decks, but I think 1.5 is 1.5 or 2, between 1.5 and 2,
Yep.
just because if Dragapult is as good as we think it's going to be, plus it can compete in today's format already, you can't really rank it lower than that.
Yeah, that's fair. And Joe, I know you said you've been playing it all week. Do you sort of echo that sentiment now?
Yeah, I like it. I like it in 1.5.
Yep.
As a floor for the deck, really. I
Yeah.
think with more time and a few tweaks, I think it could definitely be solid.
That's it. Yeah, I see. If it's already competing now and it picks up a big bad matchup, you can't go wrong with that, can we? Really? Right. Let's round off the ADP variant. So, ADP Milotic. Now, I think we can all agree Milotic is a really good attacker. You know, plus 50 for each retreat cost. Against basics with slapping, you've got to you've got Galar Mine and you've got Absol. But I don't think, Joe, I'm 100% convinced that ADP Milotic is the best way to play it, in my humble opinion. Have you given Milotic much thought? What do you feel is the best Milotic variant?
I think it's the worst Milotic variant.
Here we go. Yeah, I like this. I like that I'm actually thinking these cards through good now.
It's like you've gone back in time to when you played ADP Keldeo, and
Yeah.
you have to survive long enough to Ultimate Ray, basically. And from the games I've played with Zacian build,
Yeah.
sometimes you don't even have time to alter creation for the full value.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah,
So
yeah.
I think ADP Milotic is just like so strictly worse than playing it with Zacian. It's absurd, and your damage output is good with Milotic, but it's still trash against Dragapult because it's
Yes.
stage 1 with 1 retreat cost.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
So all that work you're putting in is just not worth it compared to just playing Zacian. So I would put it in LOL tier compared, like even I'd put it lowest.
Oh wow.
Milotics.
Okay, Jack, is that how you feel about ADP Milotic as well?
I mean, yeah, it feels like a strictly worse ADP Zacian, like we say. It's conditional damage, and it's not got Metal Saucer to get over the hump of not
Yeah.
being able to Ultimate Ray. So it's pretty bad. The card itself is pretty interesting.
Yep.
But I think it just struggles with too much to be able to compete effectively, really.
Yeah, I remember when Milotic sort of first got leaked and people on Verbank. Like, so I've learned now. I used to get involved in Verbank all the time. Now I've learned you can't beat Verbank. If someone's dead set on a deck, they're dead. You can't convince them. But I remember reading the comments thinking, are you guys insane? You relying on Ultimate Ray to get this guy set up? Are you absolutely bonkers? There were games like Joe said where you don't even get Ultimate Ray, you don't even get your GX off, and you want us to solely rely on that? Are you absolutely bonkers? And like we said, Dragapult's to stage 1 with a warm retreat. So we're going to do 60 or 90, sorry, after you've GX. Oh, that's incredible. Like, get out of him. People annoy me sometimes. Like, I'm actually getting heated thinking about it. Let's move on. I'm leaving it in LOL. That's a terrible, silly people. All right. Now, speaking of Milotic, though, I think if you are dead set on playing Milotic, I do think that Frostmoth is the way to go. That lets you lean into other water type attackers, like you can lean into a 1/1 Lapras if you want. I think the big one you pick up though is the potential of a Palkia GX. I think that can maybe start swinging your what's it called, Dragapult matchups back. Probably not, but it's an option. What do you think, Joe, about Milotic Frostmoth?
Yeah, that's my favorite way to play it as well. I think it has the most advantages over the other options. I'm still a little bit concerned that you have to commit a lot of bench and like deck space towards like Absols when you're also trying to filter your deck as quickly as possible with like buckets and trying to get your Moth online and stuff like that. So you got to commit a lot of deck space to ball search and stuff like that to get online. But I think it's probably the best way to play Milotic. After initially thinking that like Milotic's scalable damage looks great on paper. I think it's like usually going to be more work than it's worth, even with Galar Mine and stuff. So I wouldn't put these high tier, but this Milotic list I would probably put at like tier 3 rather than LOL. And I'd put the Welder list in LOL as well.
Oh, we'll get there. Don't worry about that. We'll get to that one. Jack, what do you think about Milotic Frostmoth?
I think all 3 of these are tier 3/LOL probably, but I think the Welder list might be a little bit better, just because I don't think in a format where we have boss's orders, I don't think Frostmoth plus, like you say, the Absols on the bench plus needing a backup attacker, I don't think it can ever really work. So I think Welder is slightly better. That being said, I think they're all pretty low, but I think again the Frostmoth build feels kind of Exodia-y. You need a Frostmoth plus probably a backup Snom. You need a Milotic in the active, maybe even a Milotic on the bench, just because you're probably going to be getting knocked out every turn. But say you don't, you then probably need 1 or 2 Absols out, plus a Galar Mine.
Plus staging.
Galar Mine means you can't be playing things like Viridian and stuff for more energy. You have to play the buckets. The buckets are consistency cards technically, but they're also not draw cards because they're tutor cards, which means they don't help you set up. So I think the Frostmoth variant seems a little bit Exodia-y. It sounds great when it's all set up, but you then just pretty much fold to not being able to find a second Snom sometimes because you can't consistently set up multiple Milotics. Maybe you only need 1 turn of setting up a load of energy, and then you can pretty happily sacrifice your Frostmoth because you've got attackers online. So maybe it's fine, but I think all of these are pretty low. I initially thought it was I thought it was pretty strong. We've seen this kind of damage do okay in the past, and this is the best retreat-based damage we've ever had. But it just doesn't have the fact it's like the reason why some of these cards have done well in the past is because they've been cheap, and this is not a cheap attacker. So I think Frostmoth is. I think they're all pretty on a par. I put them all in 3 or all in LOL, but I think that it's just too much work for what it's worth.
Yeah, no, I agree. Like in the games I've played with it, like you said, like if you're gonna be piling energy on, like if you're playing ADP, why is it not a Zacian for a start? If you're putting water energy or something, at least have it like Palkia potential, even a Lapras. Like I don't know, it's just like you need a lot to go in, and because you're having to play Galar Mine, I found myself like I tried the Jirachi, but then you can't retreat your own Jirachi, so you can't play that. Like you can't you end up messing yourself up, and like you said, you're trying to like you want to play buckets, but then you want to play like bite. It's just like just stop, guys, just stop. It's a pretty card, don't get me wrong, Milotic, it's a nice card, but let's not be messing about. And as for the Welder one, I just don't see how you're getting that all involved. Like how are you getting down bare Absols when you're just drawing 3 a turn, and then if you're gonna be putting down Denays and stuff to help draw through, like Dragapult is gonna lap those up. So I'm not really completely sold on Welder either. And I'm not gonna lie, I'm gonna preface that of saying I haven't even given Welder Milotic the time of day, so I could be wrong. It could be a high flyer in regards to setting up. I just don't think it will be. And if I'm wrong, then you can come back and timestamp this video and say shit, you're wrong. But I'm gonna put myself on the cross on that one and hope that I'm gonna be okay. Right, let's go on to one that I'm a really big believer of. This is Malamar Vmax. Now, this is a card where I just saw it and I thought, alright, well, it hits 180 and it's dark, so it one-shots Dragapult. Is it actually good enough against other stuff? After playing the greens version, I feel as if, I think it can be, to be honest. It's going to be a deck where I'm probably have to invest a lot more time into it. I think the list can do with some work, like whether you want to play like hammers or stuff, or like a laner potentially as well. But at face value, I didn't think the whole counter game greens route was viable. After playing a fair few games of it, I mean, it kind of is. That being said, only removing 1 card from hand. If they have 2, you're sort of like whoops. Like as if there's 2 cards you want to hit, you're like whoops there. Like now I'm just doing 180. But you can sort of attrition games out, and over time you can sort of come back and win games that way. I'm not really a big fan of combat decks because I just like to be super aggressive most of the time. But Jack, any thoughts on Malamar Vmax?
So this card's really interesting because the green, like we've seen greens Mismagius type engines work in the past. And I assume that's the way you've kind of built it. You want to go behind with Mismagius.
Counter gain,
counter gain. Typing is great. Sure, you're one-shotting one of the best attackers in the format. That's really good.
Yep.
The Greens engine has never been super consistent, but things like Greenzard, things like Tina Chomp, Mismagius, things like Guzzlord, Mismagius,
Yep.
Naga Guzz, Mismagius, they've all worked to a certain extent in the past, so we know the engine works. And the typing is probably the best typing we've ever had, because Dragon isn't a great typing, so it's better than all of those. But it's a stage 1, which means you have to devote spaces to things like Evo Incense or other search cards, which means you don't have as much flexibility with your greens package. And it's also, I think, the discard 1 card from their hand is almost irrelevant text in some situations, because we have so many different ways of searching out the Denes, of drawing cards. Intrepid Sword already makes this kind of scary, because they're getting a +3 at the end of their turn to hit more targets anyway. So the odds of them having to, after Intrepid Sword, being in an Intrepid Sword format is kind of scary. That being said, you can late game completely lock people, lock people. So it sounds interesting. The thing that puts me off the most, though, is I think we've tried this. I think this deck has been tried before, or theoried before in like Control Breakzard or Greenzard when Breakzard came out.
Yeah, I'm with you.
And it tutored 3 cards at the end of the turn. So yes, it did. So it didn't have to go behind, and it started tutoring pieces already. You didn't have to greens for them. You were able to really build up these control combos where you could do then like the Pidgeotto style thing where you stamp and lock your opponent's hand. Obviously, this attack does it really well. You're guaranteed discarding a card every turn, so you have to Mars less. You can do it earlier, that kind of thing. But I don't see personally why this can work more than Breakzard, which tutored 3 for the combo every turn, which forced stamps early, because you can be stamped yourself. Greens is super scared of getting stamped late game.
That's fair.
They don't have their whole engine is supporter based, and if they miss, they miss. So I'm not like, this is a really good in theory paper deck, but so was Control Breakzard. I remember sitting and chatting to Joe about that one day, and I was like, this deck's insane, and it did nothing. It actually did nothing. So I think Malamar is flashy, and it has a lot going for it on paper, and its typing is probably the best typing we've ever seen for this kind of archetype. But I don't think it's good enough. I actually have it in like 2.53 tier, because I just think it's too slow. I think it's one of the only reasons I'd actually play it after looking down everything, even though it's good on paper, is probably the typing. It feels like the only other way you can play this is like Dark Boxy style, and Dark Box has way better attackers, I think. So I think it's very, very flashy, but actually just a worse Breakzard style deck, and I don't think Breakzard was ever particularly successful in my eyes. So in my eyes, it's just a worse Breakzard. And it also doesn't have Welder, which Breakzard does, and Breakzard still does nothing right now. So that's my opinion, at least. I don't know.
All right, that's fair. Joe, is Malamar VMAX just the worst Breakzard?
Yeah.
No!
I think it's pretty bad. I don't ever see you beating like Mill or Stall. I think you're going to get outpowered by the Pikaroms, the Zacians. Like Dragapult, if Dragapult's the only thing like holding it together, like Dark Box feels like it does it probably better.
No, that's
or,
fair. Yeah.
Goons does it with a better matchup spread, probably. So, I don't really see many selling points of Malamar, to be honest.
No, that's
and also, like the Tina Chomp / Naga Guzz style approaches dropped off as soon as the supporter change came into effect. That also puts me off.
Yeah. Now, with that all being said, as enthusiastic as I am for the deck, I'm not going to sit everything like the best deck ever. Like you said, you're super reliant on your greens combo. If you miss greens turn 1 going second, you're in super screwed territory. The way that the list panned out, or at least my list, you haven't really got you're not swimming in space. Like I think I was only playing like a 3-2 of your Miss Majors, or even a 2-2. You have to rely on Pokecom, which is never ideal, especially when you're playing like 8 or 9, 10 Pokemon in general. But what I would say, after playing the game I did play, I wouldn't underestimate it. Like, have you played at all with these decks? Have you played Malamar at all, guys?
No.
No, like it's because I was super skeptical before trying it. It's one of the first that I tried from Clash. I was like, okay, let's just get out of the way. It's a VMAX. People want to watch it. But like, I don't know. You do the old stamp to 3 and 4 every now and then. Rip out that one card. All of a sudden, like, oh, if you can combine it with a KO, I don't know. I feel. But what I don't like though is how sensitive of a game, like if that's your ideal game plan, to stamp to 4, hope they don't have 2 good cards whilst power plant's in play, it's not the greatest, but you can get some comebacks. I'm not gonna lie, like it will win games. With that all being said, as enthusiastic as I am for the deck, guys, and trust me, I am. This is one deck I can't wait to play on TCGO. I can't put it higher than 2, and I think realistically it's going to be a 2.5 jobby. As much as I love it, I can't. Like, what'd you do against Zacian, guys? Did you want 3 out of it in turn, for Pete's sake? But yeah, I'm a fan. I am a fan. But then I just like bad decks, don't I? Really, that's just me all over. We mentioned Darkbox a little bit as well. Now this is a deck where I've got more. I think this could do more damage on the meta, because Pale Moon is I've sort of built my dark box deck, I should say, around Pale Moon, because now that stuff like Coparage has got silly HP, all the VMAXs, being able to just say, right, if I've got 6, boom, you're dead and you can't play trainers. If you get that off, from what I found, you sort of win most games. Now, granted, we are getting 6 change onto a Darkrai, and is it Night Spear or not Night Spear, Pale Black, whatever what 3 for 150 attack is, that's garbage. Now, don't get me wrong. But Pale Moon, I think, is a good enough attack to build around. Joe, what do you think on the Dark Box?
I've been baited by it twice already. I can see myself getting baited once again.
Yes.
I like its typing as a selling point. I also love that GX attack as an option. So it's sneakily getting back into a better meta game. Power Plant is for the most part irrelevant now, which is good. So I think Dark Box comes out of the meme tier and becomes an anti-meta style deck, I guess. I like that you can play things like Guzzlord for mill matchups. We have Lysander and stuff like that. So yeah, I think it's like not the worst deck that you could be piloting going forward. I think it is somewhat relevant, and its typing is a big reason for that.
Yeah. Jack, have you given Dark Box much theory or time in your head?
I mean, exactly that. Its typing is a selling point, and it's another. The fact it's called Dark Box just shows it has a variety of attackers, and these kind of decks usually, like we said, come out of the woodwork and be anti-meta options because they just run a Pokemon for this matchup and a Pokemon for that matchup. I've also been baited by it in the past. And for that very reason, I don't think it's better than like 2.5, probably 2. 2. I guess if you're putting Malamar in 2.5, it's probably 2, because I do think it's better than Malamar. But yeah, Pale Moon is Pale Moon. I think it's like you said is what it's called. It's really, really strong. And building around it is insane, and it gains a couple of cool things. Things like Boss's Orders are really nice for it. But I think it probably is inherently still pretty inconsistent. Red and Blue is probably one of the only. It's probably one of the only decks that will ever use Red and Blue. So maybe this is the way to use Red and Blue. But I kind of don't see, like, the only new thing it gets is a good typing, I think. So, and it didn't work when Red and Blue first came out. It was dropped pretty much as of day 1. So I'm not super convinced, but it seems it's probably the best it's ever been, which and it's got a pretty big cult following as well, so it's probably fine.
Yeah, no, that's true. Like, out of the Dark Box videos I've done, they've been getting decent views on the channel. It's weird because Pale Moon, we're all agreeing Pale Moon is nuts. And when I built my deck, I just said I just want a Pale Moon and then Greedy Crusher Dene. That's all I want to do, right? And like when you do that, like, I don't know, it sounds easy on paper, but I don't know. I really see. I want to put it in tier 2, but then I look at Toxicity and I'm thinking, is it as good as Toxicity VMAX? And then I'm thinking, no. I think they take it down to 2.5, and I'm thinking, yeah, but it's better than. Oh, it's hard. I'm gonna leave it in 2.5, but for me, it's gonna be. I'm moving it to the top because I do. Like I said, just Greedy Crusher Dene, man. Boom. And if you ever get Gigafall off, that almost wins you almost games as well. But
yeah. I've been trying some fun stuff with at least not trying. I've been theorying things where you can lean into Darkrai Prism as more of an option because you can scoop up net that guy now as well.
Okay,
So
yeah.
that's just another thing to bear in mind. You can try playing like energy retrieval, Darkrai scoop up net. There's some fun stuff you can try that's different from previously.
Okay, now that's interesting. Yeah, no, I don't know, I just feel all you need is that swing tone of Power Moon, man. A lot of decks are like, whoops, what's happened here? Like, you know what I mean? So I'm gonna put it at the top of 2.5. I can't put it in the same tier toxicity. I can't, but it's one to keep your eye on for sure. Let's just get with the last Dark deck here now. Obstagoon. Now this was a deck where I thought, okay, Obstagoon. If you lean more into a Sableye type route, okay, now it's hard to accelerate Sableye. I don't really like the idea of B, but you might have to moving forward. But Obstagoon doesn't really. I mean, obviously all the Vmax has come around and it can't wall them off. But I guess a lot of other stuff on this list right so far, like you're locking them. And if you can just Sableye whip out your Dragapult, in theory you should be okay. Jack, is that a fair assessment or?
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. I think Obstruct is much easier played around now. I think there's less targets for Obstruct now because the VMAXs seem to be not a meme in this set. They seem to be better.
Yeah, that's fair.
So you probably have to lean back into Sableye. With that being said, Sableye really cleanly KOs Dragapult. I think it's 3 counters. And it's,
that's it. 3. Yeah.
That's so easy. So you have to go back into the Obstagoon Sableye kind of deck, which is very different to the Obstagoon kind of Obstruct Lock deck.
Yep.
As you said though, the biggest issue with that was you could never accelerate energy to Sableye, and you still can't. And I think that's probably enough to keep it kind of low. Obstruct will win you games in certain spots, but because you're not leaning into it as much, it's probably worse, and you probably can't rely on it as much.
Yeah.
So it's probably worse than it is right now because you have to make the deck worse to keep up with the VMAXs, and the good parts, it then makes the deck worse for the non-VMAX matchups. So if it's like tier 2 now, it's probably going down a tier, but I'd say in this kind of tier chart, tier 2 is like tier 1.5, so I'd probably put it in with Toxicity kind of area. I think it can compete and it can probably cheese the games it gets set up, but I just don't think it will be consistent enough to be able to be a very big threat. Like you had to, there was a lot of decks that had to really think about their Obstruct outs in this format, and I actually think you really don't need to think about it very much at all in coming into the next format, because I just don't think it's as much of an issue because the deck changes and the deck gets worse.
That's fair. Joe, is that how you feel about Obstagoon as well?
I think Goons is still pretty solid, actually. I think, there'll be some things like Bead or like Rayquaza, E-Switch, some stuff that's a bit whack to try and support this Sableye is probably going to be spaces that you'd rather commit elsewhere in the deck, but I think Obstruct is still solid against a lot of things. Definitely. And things like Fion spaces are probably going to become like Boss's Orders plus scoop up net spaces. So that could actually bode quite well for it. So I wouldn't write off Goons going forward. I think it's still tier 2 and relevant for sure.
Yeah, I think doing the theory one I've been thinking of, like if you could just if only Sableye had one curless cost, man, you'd be rolling, get that counter gain and away you go. But I still think I think people are forgetting about Obstagoon. Like at the end of the day, like we said, Obstruct is still good, and I think people forgetting about it. Dark typing is nice, and you might even, I haven't played Obstagoon versus Dragapult yet, but you might be able to beat Dragapult just by evolving up using Obstruct for 1A. I'm not sure, I'm not sure. But
Sableye, like they can't even kill a Sableye. You attack with again with Sableye. Like it's pretty good.
Okay, so I think I'm gonna put it in tier 2 for now. I think that's fair. Right, let's bash out some of these ones I think we all know are gonna be quite low. Arcanine Burning Scarf, Joe.
Lol.
Okay, that sounds good to me. Jack, anything to add there? An Arcanine Burning Scarf.
It's a budget deck. It's pretty bad other than that.
I think it's a pretty bad budget deck at that point as well. What other low ones have we got? I haven't actually that many low ones, to be fair. That might have been the last easy low one. I want to pick your brains on this. Now, I'm not going to lie. I have played a lot of Rebel Clash. This is a deck I haven't got to yet. But I'm thinking a Coparaja build, a greens, a lot of healing, you're relying on metal sources, and then the Jaw Loon that's got like Oblivion Ring for metals. It seems super slow on paper, but I'm saying, right, I'm just going to build up this big hench geezer. Can you deal with it? Joe, a greens-esque tank Coparaja, what's your thoughts?
I I think when I tried to build Copperager, I tried it with Galarian Berserker. I think it's better to be adding damage than reducing damage in this format, personally.
Yeah, that's fair.
So I don't know if a greens route is the best way. I do like Duraludon doing early pokes for damage to like set things up and actually give you things to do and make the prizes awkward. So if you are, it's like the Volcanion of this list, I guess, is how you're trying to play it.
Yeah.
A little bit of a concern when you're playing a greens-based build is that you still need to find your stage 1 naturally, which is something that the tag team lists have never had to struggle with.
That's fair.
So I think greens is a little bit sketchy for me, but for me, I'd play Copperager either with Berserker or with still an element of ADP in the list. So that makes me think Copperager is more of a small part player than a full-on, like, I am 4/4 Copperager and I'm here to stay kind of thing. So that's my
fair.
2 cents on it.
That's fair. Jack, do you think Copperager can stand on his own?
I think in that sort of Galarian Berserker build, it's probably, if you build a Copperager deck, it can stand on its own. It's whether it's as good as without ADP. But the dealing extra damage does sound pretty good. This guy is naturally tanky enough that you probably don't need much healing anyway. Like a couple of Frying Pan is probably all the damage reduction you need to be able to take a lot of hits and deal a lot of damage. It actually sounds fairly decent. It doesn't sound anywhere near as good as things like Turbo Zacian, which will just be quicker metal variants. But it doesn't sound awful at all. We get the good Meowth, which means Berserker isn't a meme anymore. It's actually way more consistent. We have Duraludon, which is the best Oblivion Winger we've ever had because it's for colorless and it attaches anywhere, right? Which is really, really strong.
I think so, yeah.
It has very, very good merits. Again, I just don't think it has the raw power level that some of the higher decks do, but I still think it is probably a decent archetype. And like Joe said, I like the build around playing Berserkers and dealing more damage because we're in a format where tanking is good, but we're like attacks are doing so much you can't, like, even if you heal you're probably still getting knocked out by a second attack because stuff's overkilling you so much. So I like just overkilling stuff as well. Doing 280 for 4 is like a flat damage with no drawbacks on something that is definitely taking a hit against everything except fire types, and maybe even against fire types if you're able to find pans and they don't play scrappers and stuff. It tanks, and it probably is taking 4 prizes against some of the 2 prize decks, so it's probably fine. I see it on like in my mind, it's like a better Sandaconda or Boltund, but nowhere near the level of like Toxtricity. So I'd place it like in between 2 and 2.5, probably 2.
Okay then. So if we just pretend that this little Duraloon isn't my greens idea and it's your idea, Joe, the Berserkers, where would you put it?
probably 2.5 as well. Yeah, it seems fine.
Yeah, that seems fair. Well, now we know that Shay's green idea, a little rubbish. I love greens, man. I just love it. I love searching. Oh, hang on. Here's a low one. What's this guy called again? Stonejourner? Yeah, there's no reason to play this now, surely, lads, alright?
Sandacondas.
Yeah, but gonna say now that Sandaconda's a thing, yeah. Okay, sorry, mate. You had your almost 15 minutes of fame. Right now, let's not. Okay, it's funny that while I was talking about LOLs, this deck caught my eye because, right, Lost March. Now these people that love Lost March, okay, every set there's always Pokemon they throw you a little bone. And as it stands, I don't even know what the new thing is this set. Is it Cottonade as a DC attack? Oh no, Twin Energy, that's the one. Twin Energy. Yeah. So, and every set, the Lost Marchers, they get excited again. And I'm not convinced. Joe, am I right to not be convinced?
You know Dragapult spreads 5 to the bench, right?
That as well? Yeah,
I think Lost March is trash. Let's lol it.
Let's lol it. Jack, are you in agreement now?
Yeah, it loses it, like it doesn't scale with HP, like it doesn't scale like HP does, and it did nothing when we got the Whimsicott and Cottony, which theoretically made it better. It actually didn't do anything. Twin Energy is probably the best card it could have got, other than like a battle compressor that goes to the
Lost Zone.
It's just a meme.
Oh, I can't wait when I cut this up into it's gonna be is Lost March next format? It's gonna be like 2 minutes. Like lol, next one. Yeah, like I don't know why people seem to latch on to Lost March. Again, I'm gonna stand here. I'm gonna put myself on the cross here and say Lost March will not do any damage in this next meta. I'm gonna go on a limb, hot take if you want to call it that. But yeah, you guys are mad. Like, what is it, 20 for each one Lost Zone? Stuff's got like 340 HP now, lads. Come on now. Like, we're going to get your whole deck in the Lost Zone.
When you killed a Zoroark, it's like I've hit the end game when I've killed a Zoroark.
I'm gonna say I don't think we have enough cards to be able to get enough Lost Marches in the Lost Zone to be able to one-shot stuff.
That's
I don't think there's enough actual Lost Zoning cards that can do that, is there? Unless there's anything I'm missing. I'm pretty sure there's not though. I don't know.
No, you'd have to start winning Pokemon just to like Lost Blender at that point, I think. So yeah, I'm not convinced. Not convinced at all. Now here's a deck where I've latched on to Tangrowth a lot. Okay, guys, like I like Tangrowth as a geezer. It's a funny little geezer. You know what I mean? 1 energy, does big damage. You've got Beast Game, I believe it's called, to like try and uptrade that way. Now you got Galamon. When I saw Galamon, the first card I thought of was Tangrowth. That being said, it's on my list of decks to do for my 20 decks in 20 days, and I just keep putting it off because I'm just thinking, is it actually worth the time investment? Joe, is Tangrowth worth the time investment moving forward?
Well, it's certainly better than Milotic variants, I think. I like disrupting Jirachi from some of the best decks in the format, like the Zacians and the Pikaroms will still be playing those, even though Dragapult can punish them. So Tangrowth saying, well, just making that a liability is great for you. Making Boss's Orders / Tangle Drag a win condition is pretty good in a lot of situations. So I like it as a one prize deck. I think it's like fine. So I'd put it in that 2.5 category for sure. I know we're lumping a lot of stuff into that sort of speculative area, but it can't really climb that much higher. But I like decks that it can race when it needs to, and it can have that alternate win condition available to it, like at all times if your opponent doesn't play properly. So I think it's like fine.
Jack, anything to add there on Tangrowth? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it seems fine. It seems to get worse because of the Vmaxes, but get better because Galamine is probably the best card it could have ever asked for.
Yeah.
I can't see it making much of an impact on the meta, but it's probably, again, it feels weird to lump all of these decks together, but they're probably all fine kind of anti-meta choices that will punish stuff if you hit the right matchups, and probably get punished if you hit 2 or 3 Dragapult in a day. You're probably done. So
yeah, that's true. Yeah. I think 2.5 seems right to me. Like I said, if you can dodge Dragapults, like you said, like I mean, that's going to add up quick with Galamine, and I like it just because it's a one prize over Milotic. Like the damage might not scale as aggressively, but because you're a one prize, I prefer that. Weave in the stamp, you've got Beast Game if to fall back on. If you want like an Ultra Beast route, you might even be able to weave it. I'm not sure, but I think it's decent. It is one I actually need to pull my finger out my bomb and actually build and get on the channel. But yeah, I do think it's decent.
I was thinking of as well, what's it called? You can play Twin Energy in this deck and try and attack with Absols sometimes against Dragapult.
No, that's fair. Yeah. No, that is true. That is something that is like I've looked at to be fair. Like, you can start attacking with Absol now, So no, that's fair. That is fair. Let's have a gander. Right, let's tackle these mills, these stalls, whatever you want to call them. I've got 3 variants here. We saw the Macargo, which did some damage in Japan, sort of coming over a little bit more in the Limitless tournament and did some damage. I can't tell you the exact numbers, but I know it had a decent showing. I think, if I'm not mistaken, did it have more than the Cincino in like day 2?
No, there was more Cincino, but
was it?
Two made top 8, and there was only one Cincino make top 8. No, there was 2 Cincino. So there was 2 Cincino, 2 Magcargo. It had a better conversion rate because
that's the one I'm thinking of. Conversion,
were played, but there wasn't as many.
Okay, so now we've got, like we said, we've got the Macargo one to think about as well. I've put birds in there, but I imagine that might not be as great. But moving forward now, Boss's Orders, I imagine, isn't great for Mill. I'm just going to preface now, I've never played Mill. I would never do that to myself or my opponent. But I imagine Boss's Orders is a negative. Dragapult's a bit of a big fat negative as well. But Jack, talk to me. How does Mill adapt? Because I know one thing I've learned about Mill. I've said this before. If Mill exists in any capacity, it will always adapt. It will always overcome, like that Liam Neeson meme, whatever that or whatever it is. It will adapt and overcome. It will do good. Are there enough tools in the box for Mill to do that, Jack? And if that is the case, which one do you feel is like the best one moving forward?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. Someone will find a way of breaking the control cards, and I think it just changes. I've had a fairly long discussion with Joe about Mill.
Okay.
And Bird seems terrible because you just get run out. Like, Dragapult takes too many prizes against you too quickly. So I think Bird's is pretty bad now.
Would you say it's LOL before we get started?
I don't think it's LOL because
3?
I actually I wish I'd played it more in this format because I think it's I want to see how good it is in this format. I think one of the only scary things is actually Dragapult, because you're like, it's a hand locking deck rather than a mill deck, so you can hand lock to make sure your opponent doesn't hit boss's orders. So it's probably the best deck to try and avoid boss's orders, but the best of the 3 to try and avoid boss's orders because you're hand locking rather than milling.
Yeah.
But I don't think you have enough time, especially against Dragapult. So I don't think I'd put it as LOL, but I'd put it like 2.53 probably.
Okay, I'll put it in.
Magcargo loses to. Well, Magcargo's sort of controlling condition is putting stuff to sleep, and it seems like we're going to be moving into a format where this is less good. It seems like Malo and Lana might be a much stronger pick in tag call engines.
Yeah.
There's already a lot of decks already playing for Switch.
Yeah.
So I don't think Magcargo is the way to go anymore. I don't want to rate it super badly because there will be matchups where Mill just beats. That's always going to be the case. But I think Cincino is still. I think Cincino is actually better than Magcargo anyway.
Okay.
But I think Cincino is still the best way of doing it. But I think it goes away from being a mill style variant and more to a handlock style variant. Again, me and Joe were chatting a couple of nights ago, and dolls are much worse because you can gust around them now.
Yep.
So you have to build your deck kind of differently. You have to build your deck on relying your opponent to take prizes to then stamp Mars.
Okay.
And kind of crumb their hand. The issue with that is kind of Zacian decks can outdraw you. So I still don't think it's great. Mill will find a way. It always does. But I think Cincino moves away from dolls and aggressively discarding because they lose too quickly and goes into a handlock style scenario like Birds was like post Worlds last year and up until like December, January this year. That's probably the way it has to go. I think we kind of concluded. Whether that is good enough or whether it's going to be another game-breaking thing that someone has to find, I don't know yet. But in my mind, that's the way to play Mill, probably straight out of the gate, just because I guess straight out of the gate, you can probably get away with playing Cincino Mill pretty standard as it was, just to try and beat suboptimal lists. But I don't think that's good for more than like a week because people will find the right counts for boss's orders and start ignoring your dolls, and all of a sudden you lose your draw engine super quickly. So plus it still has Dragapult and ADP Zacian, which are pretty bad matchups to deal with anyway. So I think it will find a way, but I think it will have to change, and I don't know how it will change because I'm not big brain enough to work out how it will change. But Mill will be around somehow.
Okay. Joe, Jack been saying you've been having a big old talk about Mill. Is that? Do you mirror those thoughts? Is that what you're thinking? That Cincino's the way to go, and it will adapt, but we just don't know how yet.
Cincino feels the safest because obviously you have more hit points than the Bird against Dragapult, and Magcargo gets targeted a lot easier by Gust, and a Dragapult knocking out one Magcargo is way more impactful than it knocking out one Cincino. So that's probably definitely the best engine you're going to build behind.
Yep.
But I think we both kind of agreed that you really have to attack your opponent's board a lot more with Mill now. It's not just like run the deck to zero. It's like trying to boss's orders trap them with Galar Mines, and it's trying to attack their energies a lot more to buy yourself time, because you can't expect that just playing the game and milling their deck as fast as possible in the like 10 turn window you give yourself is going to work anymore, because people find the answer too quickly, and if they're playing, scoop up net Mewtwo, they just get the boss attack, get the boss attack, get the boss attack, and you've lost, right? So you've got to make them draw through their deck again naturally, rather than just mill their deck, remove their energies, get to that Oranguru zone where you can get your Crushing Hammers back, make it happen all over again. So I think more aggressive draw in the list and attacking their board state is going to be more important. There are some great cards for mill coming out in this set. Like Boss's Orders is also like a godsend for the deck, even though it's a pain against it. It gains like capture energy to help you get Zacian down turn 1 and get you Mincino's down turn 1. So its consistency is like still there. I think the biggest thing I want to try is Clefable Scoop Up Net in control. I think that seems really, really annoying. Playing Crushing Hammers plus Scoop Up Net Clefable, I'm excited to test out as control because it really does affect the board quite in like a really annoying way and scuffs their top deck. So I think that's certainly the avenue I'm looking at the most, and I think that sort of approach is still like tier 1 or tier S. Because Mill has the toolkit that's just still so versatile and so powerful. So I would still put the Cincino approach very, very high, and I would just yeet the birds and the Magcargo down to a lower scale.
Okay, right. So from listening to you fellas, the sort of where I'm gonna place this sort of thing, I've put birds in 3. I think Magcargo, just because I look at the decks in 2.5, I'm gonna put it in 2. I'm gonna put it in 3 as well. Does that seem fair?
I think birds is like irrelevant. I'd put Magcargo a little bit higher than that, just because Nap Trap can still beat some stuff because people have to pass into you in certain turns. It depends how many people want to add in Malolana plus Scoop Up Net Mewtwo as an option, and how many people actually do go ahead and do that. If they don't, then the Nap Trap is still strong, but otherwise it's pretty pants.
Okay, that seems fair. I'll put that at 2.5.
That's crazy.
No. Now here's the thing. You said S. Now if we're gonna put Cincino in S, we're gonna have to shift up some of these other guys as well. Because you can't say that's the.
That's why I wanted ADP and Turbozation in S as well.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. Let's beef out some S's now, because like we can't just have. Come on, Jack. We can't just be putting Mincino in S. Oh my lord.
I'm happy putting ADP and Turbozation. I had ADP in my S. When
did you?
The other day. I just didn't have Turbozation because I hadn't thought about it enough. But that makes sense.
I threw you guys off by wanting to put Turbozation in S, but that's because I was also expecting to put these in S as well.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
I like this as our S tier because Zacian, like I said back then, was the best attacker they've ever printed. So.
No, that's completely fair. So so that looks all well and good to me. Right. Let's have a look. What have we still got? So we've got the chart. We've got the welders. Let's tackle some of the welders. So we've got 4 water decks here. We've got Magcargo attack. We've got ABZ. We've got a green Zargs. And that had inklings of doing well recently. And then we've got baby counts. Let's do baby counts first, because I think that's going to be the easiest one. So baby clowns. Now Joe, we had a little discussion about this a little bit on the Facebook Messenger, as it were. Doesn't gain a whole lot. It gains potentially Boss's Orders, but we all know baby counts now. We all know it's a silly deck, and it's one of my least favorite decks to play against. With that being said, where would you put it?
I think actually the biggest card it gains is Ninetales V to help out against control. That's like one of the things it scoops to at the moment. But potentially yoinking some resource managements on your own end to keep you in the game is quite nice. I don't think it even plays Boss's Orders. I don't think my list would play it because you're so reliant on Welder anyways. I think you just try and hit what's in front of you like it kind of does at the moment and have Cramorant in there for those other occasions. I'm a little bit worried about being so Jirachi and focused because there is Dragapult as a concern now. Dragapult is also, from what I've seen in the Japanese lists, and also from what I've seen some of the more successful ADP lists, is that they're heavy Marnie based.
Okay.
One of the only things keeping Blacephalon from being like crazy. I know some of the successful ADPs in the Limitless tournament. I know Tord played for Marnie, so certainly a good number of high Marnie counts in ADP going forward, and probably Dragapult as well because they're fairly low maintenance and you have to disrupt these sorts of decks somehow. So I think it's still tier 1 for me, Blacephalon, but it's just kind of, there are a few more foils for it now. I think Dragapult isn't necessarily as free as you'd think, just because it gives up more prizes, etc. I think it's low-key gaining nothing, and there's a few things that challenge it. But I would still keep it in tier 1 because we know how successful it's been.
Yeah. Jack, does that sound pretty fair?
Yeah, I agree entirely. I think it's still very strong. These 3 prizes that are coming out of the woodwork, yes, they seem scary, but also you trade up on them.
Yeah.
So yeah, it doesn't gain much, but I don't think it needs to gain much because I think it's a very, very not consistent 16, a very, very strong 16 already. So I don't think it needed to gain much to still stay relevant.
Yeah.
But yeah, Dragapult is a little bit scary, and Marnie theoretically getting better and better with these stage 1 decks being more combo based because you need to evolve. Yeah, that does scare me a little bit. I've never played much Baby Clowns myself, but it's another deck that's come out of the woodwork in formats where it doesn't seem good, and it's been insane, and it seems pretty good in this format. So I think it's definitely not going anywhere.
Yeah, no, I think I echo that all completely. Like Baby Clowns, and this happens a lot with new sets because about people like to get excited, like, oh, look at Dragapult, look at this, oh, this is the end of this. Like, let's not forget now, Baby Clowns, all it has to do is just match the number of energy in its hand, and you can just one-shot anything. Like, I saw a meme on Twitter where if I remember to put it on the screen now, but it's like this big Copraja, right? And he was towering above, and there's a Blacephalon throwing fire energies out, and he's like, "Lol, I've got a frying pan. What are you gonna do? I've got 340 HP." And the Blacephalon just scratches his head, gets 8 energies. Like, there you go, then. So like let's not forget, it's got an unlimited damage cap, guys. You might think, oh, 340 or 320 is a high number. Like, I'm sure Baby Clowns will find a way. Like, it doesn't need to gain a lot to still be bonkers, and at face value, it's bonkers, and I think it still remains to be bonkers. And I think tier 1 is where I'll be putting it as well. Hate the card, I hate the deck, hate it with a passion, don't get me wrong, like, but I have to respect its power level. Let's have a gander. Let's move into the Charizards. ABZ. Now, I know, Joe, you played a lot of ABZ before in the past. I haven't touched ABZ at all. I respect it as a deck, but I know one of the main selling points before was having the really good Gust. Now, I think I'll probably prefer Ninetales to a Boss's Orders, but now that Boss's Orders is a thing, does that sort of undersell the main selling point to ABZ? Is there much reason to play it still?
Yeah, kind of, and also it means decks can deal with your Ninetales a lot easier.
Yeah, that's fair.
I remember when Ability-Zard was super hype after Worlds, and then it didn't convert very well in future tournaments, and that's a lot of the time because, like, mirrors were knocking each other out, and people were finding ways to kill Ninetales and stuff. People moved to custom catchers, basically, whereas at Worlds it was mainly Great Catcher based. So,
yep.
The fact that everyone can, like, deal with your Ninetales and then you have to deal with, like, the one prizes that they use to take a knockout is such a pain in the neck for Ability-Zard. But everything else is still, like, ship-shape for Zard. Its typing is still, like, reasonable. Again, Dragapult's a concern. Its hit points kind of stays out of range of most things.
Yep.
Over even a couple of turns now, which is pretty worrying. And also, you're very Dedenne and Jirachi reliant, and you can't not be as this sort of deck.
Yeah,
because you're playing 18 energy and you need those cards for consistency. Getting Eldegoss is a nice, like, little bit of safety net, but that's really about it. So I'd keep it at like the 1.5-2 category, but I don't think I'd have it much higher than that.
Yeah. Jack, what's your opinion on ABZ?
Yeah, it feels fair. It feels like it. Some kind of welder box based list would always be pretty good just because of flexibility.
Yeah.
It's never felt. I played abilities out a lot, and since moving away from it, I've been very reluctant to go back to it. But I still think it has pretty good merit just because it's always going to be one of the most aggressive decks. Losing welder turn 1 is a bit scary for it when the rule change came around. But I still think it can compete. Maybe going to the Limitless Sheffield Regionals style build of playing a clown of your own and going down to like 16 energy might be a way to try and reach up to the 320s, 330s. But yeah, I haven't thought about that too much. But yeah, it seems like it will always be fairly relevant just because Welder is such a strong card, and as long as you've got targets to attach fire energy to, it feels like it'll always be tier 2 at least.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna put it in about 1.5 because I have to respect it. Like, I mean, like granted, like we said, everyone's thinking Vmax is gonna rule the format, but if Vmax doesn't take off in the way we all think it does, ABZ at that point is still an absolute beat stick of a deck. And yeah, I think I have to respect it too much. I mean, I want to put it in 2, but I think I'm going to respect it a little bit. I'm going to keep it in 1.5. I think I can't put it any higher than that, obviously, but I don't think. I mean, I think it's going to be better than Toxicity, and I can't have it in the same tier. So that's where I'm sitting on the ABZ. Greenzard, however, now I know this is a deck that Stefan Ivanov, another channel as well, he's been championing a lot of this format, this Sword and Shield format. I've had a chat to him about it a little bit. I'm not gonna lie, he ain't really convinced me very much. Joe, what are you thinking about Greenzard?
I'm not like super enthusiastic about it either, to be honest. There's not much that changes for it in terms of its matchup spread. You're still worried about some of the one price stuff. You still don't feel great against Mill unless you're getting out your Omastar stuff, I guess. So yeah, I mean, I don't know. I've always been anti-greens anyway, so maybe I'm a little bit biased. But I would definitely wouldn't put it above Ability Zard, for example.
Definitely.
So yeah.
Jack, does that seem fair to you? Definitely can't get above ABZ, right?
No, it's not above ABZ. It's probably like we said when we were talking about Malamar Vmax. It's probably like one of the best greens decks. It's just how good are greens decks. I'd probably put it like tier 2 at best. Maybe if we're putting Malamar in tier 2.5, maybe like between 2 and 2.5. Yeah, it's probably again one of the best greens decks, but outside of that, I don't think there's much merit to playing a control style game when the format's so aggressive anyway.
Yeah, that's fair. With all that being said, I'm putting in 2.5. I don't think it's going to be that great. Like, in all fairness, I could be wrong. This could be one rare take where I'm going to be proved wrong. And you know what? If I am, leave it in the comments. I'm sure you'll let me know. YouTube, I know what you like these days. But for now, I'm going to leave it in 2.5. I'm not convinced. Let's tackle Mewtwo. Now, Mewtwo for me is in such a weird spot. Part of me wants to think dumping off your attackers, you know, being super fast, a nice fast 300 that we all know Flare Blitz, I think it's called Flare Blitz GX, is super nice. But that being said, we've been saying as more VMAX come into the format, it could get caught in that ADP sort of realm where it's like, well, it can't realistically deal with these as easily as it could. But then Mewtwo gets a deck that can always adapt. You know, I'm sure there's some attackers you can play. So we've got 3 Mewtwo variants here. We've got the sort of welder based. We've got the ultimate Mewtwo, that's what Henry Brand championed in Perth. And then we've got the Malamar Gengar handlock version. Out of those 3, Jack, which one do you feel is the best equipped to move forward?
Well, this is the other archetype that me and Joe talked about the other night.
It's an interesting one, isn't it? Yeah.
Welder Mewtwo, I think, has kind of dropped off a little bit because, like you say, the welder attacks aren't as good anymore. The turn 2 300 doesn't always do it, and sometimes the follow-up, like even if the turn 2 300 is good enough, the follow-up isn't. Yeah. So I've kind of gone off of that a little bit. It's fine, but it's not anywhere near as good as it was or as it has been.
Yep.
Mali Mewtwo, I have always hated. I have never ever liked that deck. Yep. I am at the point now of respecting it because it had the best results this weekend. So it's probably on paper the best Mewtwo deck right now, and because of that, I respect it. I don't like it, but I respect it.
Yep.
But then Joe told me about Ultimate Mewtwo, and Joe told me about putting a Sabletar in Ultimate Mewtwo and soul bursting to a Sabletar.
Oh, okay.
So he's convinced me that's probably the best way to do things because, like, in general, I was pretty off Mewtwo before speaking to Joe about it. I was like, I don't know why you would play Mewtwo. The benefit of playing Mewtwo is the versatility.
Yep.
And that's probably why Mali Mewtwo has the best results because it's probably the most versatile.
Yeah.
With its attacks.
Mm-hmm.
But in my mind, Dragapult is not. They're not the same deck at all. But Dragapult has just as much versatility and has more HP and attacks for less energy and can just do more.
Yeah.
So in my mind, I was like, I don't know why I would play Mewtwo. I'm scared to completely write it off because of how versatile this type of card is. It will never be irrelevant.
Yes.
But none of the lists enthused me until Joe mentioned Sabletar, and then I was listening.
Okay.
So yeah, I'm gonna go with probably Ultimate for being able to compete. But I am beginning to respect, even though I am beginning to respect Malamar a bit more. So I think those two are above Welder. I don't know how I'd rate them.
Yeah.
Comparing to one another. But I will say that I think Welder is kind of not good enough anymore.
Okay, interesting. Now this is low-key what I really hoped would happen when we're talking about Mewtwo, because I've had Henry on the channel before. We've talked about Ultimate Mewtwo, and looking at it on paper, right, I think it's one of the best videos on the channel in regards to like views is how these GXs warm up. And like when you hear about every single GX had its use, had its exact matchup, had its exact mass for this, I think this deck's bonkers. And I did have an inkling that if your more traditional Mewtwo was going to fall off, I did feel if it would be some sort of bonkers Ultimate Mewtwo where you just say, right, I'm doing this, and all of a sudden, bang, here's a ridiculous outcome. So, Joe, talk to me about this Soul Burst then, my friend. Let's have a gander.
Well, I can't take all the credit for it. It was initially Mark Lutz's idea. He was playing it on stream for like a laugh kind of thing.
Okay.
It was when the EUIC was announced as cancelled, he was like, this was the deck I would have played. And it was a Soul Burst box that had 2 Sabletars in it anyway. And basically, the biggest concern going forward with Mewtwo is just that Dragapult naturally feels like a pretty sore matchup for you. The Welder list never appreciated putting in like Jirachi GX or having to go Guzhala plus special energies, weak guards, slows you down too much. And,
yes.
The Mali Mewtwo then has to like just settle for using the stuff that's weak to Dark. That can also get caught in the crossfire for people trying to counter Dragapult. There's some issues for both of those, in my opinion. But the Soul Burst seems like it challenges the Dragapult quite nicely. You really don't need much in your opening. You just need to get your Soul Burst in the bin and the Sabletar onto the board. And with tag calls, they're actually some of the most searchable cards in the deck. And Sabletar sweeps Dragapult. Like, there's actually not much they can do at all, to be honest. So that sounds pretty fun. So I think Soul Burst box is probably the best. A low-key concern is that your matchup could be getting worse against ADP Zacian, because a lot of these Mewtwo's are surviving right now by playing Swell Big Charm as a combo, and Tool Scrapper's coming out, so you can get rid of the Big Charm, even with Swell in play now. So that's a small concern. I think your ADP Zacian matchup might be like diminishing a little bit, but as a nice foil to Dragapult, I actually quite like. I don't dislike Soul Burst Mewtwo, and like you said, Henry found a way for every attacker to pose a threat or be an answer to something in the format, and I think with a small reshuffle, it could probably do it again.
Okay, that's exactly what I wanted to hear. Oh, yes, right. So with that all being said, sorry, carry on, Jack.
I was going to say that the other thing with Soul Burst Mewtwo is I think it has such a high skill ceiling.
Yes.
Like initially, when he released his list and people tried it and they were getting trash results, they were like, "Oh, this deck's awful."
Yeah.
But I think it's actually just probably one of the most difficult decks to play.
Yeah.
And therefore, the results weren't converting because people weren't giving it enough time. I think with the right mindset, I think this is why Henry did so well with it, because he's such a good player, and he built this deck. It was his pet, and he knew every single card, every single matchup inside and out. And I think if someone does that, it can easily be like an S tier deck for that individual person.
Yes,
because it's such a box style deck that you build. It's like some of Sander's control decks. No one can pick those up and play them because no one understands them, but Sander does, and Sander always does well with them. And that's how I feel about Ultimate Mewtwo. I feel like if you put the time in, if you invest a lot of hours into that deck, you can probably beat any matchup because you'll know it and your opponent won't. So that's like the results of the deck probably keep it down from whether you should think about the deck teching wise, because people pick it up, do trash with it, and drop it. But the deck's raw power level and skill ceiling, I think, is really, really high, and will always be a threat in the format if someone is willing to put the time into.
Yeah.
It seems very, very strong if you want to put in the hours.
No, 100%. Like, speaking to him, he said he put in hundreds of games. Like, he knew, Blastoise GX, you have 5 energy. After GX, KO's this, KO's that. I'm like, bloody hell, a Alolan Raticate KO's Jirachi after GX. I'm like, I did it. Like, Flygon GX after GX, there's 2 7. I'm like, bloody hell. Really, like, he's just reeling them off like this. I'm like, okay. So like I said, if we can build this deck to where we can get to that level of like everything just for this reason, I was really hoping this would be the outcome. Like, because I love Mewtwo as an idea. I think it's the most creative, the most fun. So yeah, that all seems well and good to me. So with that all being said, lads, here comes the hard bit now. Where are we putting them? So I think we're all in agreement that Welder Mewtwo is at least the one that has to adapt more, or we can see dropping. With what I've been hearing, I'm gonna say I'm leaning more into that sort of 2.5 ish. I can't put it in 3, but then, well, no. What do we think?
I'd put Welder Mewtwo in 2 probably. I'd also
2?
put Mally in 2, and then I'd put Soulburst in 1.5 or 1.
Yeah,
okay.
I would do pretty much the same. I'd put Welder in 2 definitely. I'd put Ultimate in 1.5 just because I think that, again, I think the deck has too high of a skill ceiling to ever go higher from a representation point of view. But, and Mally's weird. I'd probably put it in the same as Welder.
Yeah.
But I think it's better than Welder, but it's worse than Soulburst, so I don't know. It's weird, but yeah, 2 is probably, like, Mally will probably see the best results.
Yeah.
Because it's easier to play than Soulburst, but I think Soulburst is a better deck.
Yeah, no, that seems completely. I guess both the other Mewtwo variants, they still have their win con of like, well, I can just say, lol, here's 300. You're like, oh, like, you're going to win games still from that.
Yeah.
And then Mewtwo will still win games by just saying, right, even against the sort of bad matchup, you can just go, Night Watch, here's 2 cards, and they're like, oh, energy, something else. You're like, oh, lol, okay, here we go. So they both still have their win con, just whether they're just super competitive now.
With a couple of extra stage 1s in the format as well. Noir gets stronger. Back to him, so that's good.
Horror House can always cheese as well.
Well, that's it, yeah. Yeah, that's shout out to Jacob Downs. We played in some, I think it might have been that Neil Pye event or something like this. I was playing Turbo Goons. I was like, I'm not losing to anything. Oh, he flips over Latios. I'm like, lol, I should be fine. Just Horror Houses me. I'm like, oh, okay. And then he just carries my lone goon. So I'm like, yeah, lol. So cheers, mate. Swiftly dropped from that event after that. I can't, just not meant to be my day today, is it? Right. So that all seems well and good. Let's move on. Let's move on to one I think should be fairly quick to rank. Lapras Electrode. Now, I imagine Lapras Electrode was only played because Frostmoth last format wasn't really ideal. For getting 8 energy onto a Lapras, Frostmoth wasn't the way to go. Now with Capacious Bucket, I imagine if you are set to pen Lapras for some reason, I imagine Frostmoth is the way to go. Jack, is that a sensible conclusion?
Yeah, 100%. I probably played more played more Lapras Electrode than anyone.
Yeah, okay.
Because I played it for a stream once, and that was enough of that deck. It's great fun, but it's absolutely lol tier.
LOL!
Awful, but it's so much fun. But yeah, like, Frostmoth gets better, so just play the better card.
Yeah? Joe, is that sensible as well? Yeah?
Yep. Lol.
Okay, right, so if that being said then, Lapras Frostmoth, where are we hitting that? I mean, I imagine Lapras Frostmoth, in my opinion, is it better than Milotic? I'd like to say potentially it is. Are we in agreement now?
I think it's better than Milotic, for sure.
Yeah. So does that mean it's going to be 2.5?
I think so. Palkia seems good if straight Dragapult is the main Dragapult list, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And Lapras is another card that could just sit on board and you can just boss and win the game, so that's cool. Its typing still going to keep it in the lower side of the tier list, but I think it's definitely better than Milotic builds.
Yeah. That's fair to me. Oh, I actually missed off a Dragapult. I've just realised. So we've got Dragapult Goon. So that's going to be like the sort of Yanida, sort of list. How are we feeling about that one, Jack?
Yeah, I mean, it's probably. I think I still prefer Malamar.
Okay.
A little bit, but it's probably like in between the Roxy build and the Malamar build. It's probably fair putting it in like bottom of 1. Again, you're just leaning into such good cards. It can't be terrible. Seen like another thing is having lists to base around as well is very, very good. early on, because it means you have a good starting point rather than just putting 60 together and seeing what happens. So
Yeah.
Out the gate, it's probably going to be one of the best builds, and I don't see it going anywhere really. It will just come down to preference, I guess.
That seems fair. I think that's the sort of conclusion I was going to come to. Joe, do you remember that?
Yeah, I think out the gate, it's the most popular for sure. I think actually its existence makes the actual 60 worse, because it's teching against itself by sometimes playing Scoop Up Negiratina or playing Yell Grunt and Mewtwo and stuff, and you don't want to come up against that when you're playing it yourself. Because you don't have your own acceleration. So in a way, like it's mirror teched, and you don't want this list to be the most popular in a way. So the Malamar list might actually be a reaction to this one being probably the more commonplace list. But I think for having a better ADP matchup and for being the most consistent Dragapult, I would put it in S tier. I think it's the best one.
Yeah. So you carry on?
Just for consistency right now. But I think the Malamar will ease its way into the format and end up probably being a safer, more well-rounded list eventually.
Yeah, that's the sort of conclusion I was going to come to. I think just because, like you said, it has a semi-better ADP, having those tricks, and even though like we all know the tricks, like we said, I think it's strong in that regard. So I was going to put it in S as well. So I'm glad, Joe, we came to that same conclusion there. Well done, lad. Right, so we've got ourselves a few stragglers here. Let's have a gander. So Rillaboom Vmax. Now, this is the card where when I saw it, I was super excited. Mainly because I actually like Rillaboom a really lot as a Pokemon. I hate Rawegg, so I hated that. But the more I've played it, the more I've kind of gone off it, in all honesty. You know, like, it's got a really good damage output, don't get me wrong, but then you're discarding a lot of energy to do that. You are still, you know, LOL stage 2. With that being said, though, Jack, what are your thoughts on Rillaboom VMAX?
It's kept in check by Baby Blounds. It's kept in check by Rawegg being not great anyway.
Yeah.
The VMAX itself, it hits like a truck,
Mm.
and it has a lot of HP. But I think the existence of Welder probably keeps this down pretty far. Things like Ability Zard will always have a fairly good time. Welder Mewtwo, Baby Blounds, Magcargo, all of these decks will farm it very, very easily. And while some of these will be low tier, you like Baby Blounds and Welder box we've put as tier 1 and 1.5, and that's probably enough to keep this like no higher than tier 2.5 probably. It's pretty interesting how the deck's built, but I don't think I think just the fact that I think its typing holds it back so much that it can't ever be great, because it's just farmed by one of the best supporters ever printed. So
yeah, that seems sensible. Joe, anything? What do you think about Rillaboom VMAX?
Yeah, I'm also not too enthusiastic about it either, to be honest. What we've said about a lot of the other VMAXs is that you just sit there announcing and doing a huge amount of work.
Yep.
This list has to set up a stage 1 and a stage 2.
Yeah.
And you do your 280, they ghost your 1 prizer, and then you're down to doing scratch for 50, and it's just embarrassing. So you're more setup based than the rest, and you need to continue to stay set up the entire game, because you're removing energies from yourself in almost every situation. So I think it's worse than Rawegg build, which I also fully disrespect as an archetype.
Well, that's good.
I think this is a big green flop. I think it's a 3 or a 2.5 at the most generous.
Yeah, no, to be fair, I think I was going to put it in 3, sort of my sort of mock draft before I came on. Like, as much as I want to love it, just because I love the idea of just a double Rillaboom deck. Rillaboom's one of my favourite Pokemon from the new game. You know, Bish Bash Bosh is a lot of damage. Like you said, like, when you look at the other VMAXs, you got toxicity. Like, at least you're doing a flat 160 all the time. Once you get thingy out, you're doing big fat numbers. You're not having to discard as well. That's what really puts me off it. Like, you're having to discard energy every turn. Like I said, if they bosses, like, let's say you do your big 280, right? And they go, lol, right, there goes your Rillaboom. Baby, you're like, oh, okay, now I have to sort of get another stage 2 out whilst attaching for turn here. It just becomes a lot messy, really. So, yeah, I think it's going to be one of those sort of high flyers where you are going to have your blinders of games where like turn like, oh yeah, here's my baby Rillaboom, here's my big Rillaboom, there's 280, you can't respond, and just 280 again. But I think for every time that happens, there's going to be at least 2 or 3 times where it doesn't, or you do it and then they KO your baby Rillaboom super fast, and you're like, lol, JK, now what do I do? So yeah, I want to leave him in free. It pains me to put you there, but it really does. But I can't put it high. I'm sorry, fella. I'm sorry. Like I think I'd rather play Sandaconda at this point. Like at least it gives up 2 prizes. Like so. Yeah. Speaking of underwhelming VMAXs, this is probably the one I just can't see a route to victory or being good the most, and this is Cinderace. Jack or Joe, anyone, Joe, talk to me about Cinderace, because this is another one where it's been on my sort of 20 days list for so long. I just keep pushing it back. I'm thinking, why would I bother putting time into this? How do you feel about Cinderace?
Yeah, I'm the same. I mean, I would give you the one-word answer of LOL if it makes it easier, but like,
okay,
it's very responsive as a damage output. It's reliant on Welder, and you're also a stage 1, so you've got the issue of trying to draw a low amount of cards, but get a lot set up. One of the best selling points, I guess, is that the regular V has free retreat all the time, so you can try and sustain a Jirachi engine. So your early game is never that bad, but like, just when your opponent can literally just pass into you on turns until they're ready to either gust around you or like prod you to put you in range at times. So it's like you're just passing into people and hoping they don't have the answers in their deck at times, and that sounds like such a bad strategy. You never want to be passive in the TCG. Giving people turn, like, the best way to win games is giving your opponent the least amount of turns to win most of the time, right? So literally being like, here you go, bud, I'm going to hit you for 30 and hope you do something to me next turn.
It's funny.
Yeah, it's trash.
It's funny because I think I said this in the stream I did once, where I was like, I put a lot of time into Pidgeot Jolteon. So I think if you want to try and lean into the counter, I just don't think it's as good. Like, because counter on Pidgeot was for 1, you had max potion in format, you had time people, you just keep reusing it, and then with a Fury Belt, you weren't going to one-shot it. And which, to be fair, you can't really one-shot a Cinderace, but your counter is for 2 now. Okay, there is no sort of max potion. There is no I'm just going to erase all my damage in one turn. If you sort of lean into like your Malolanas and that, like we said, the format is so bonkers now. Like a Zacian can hit you, and if you Malolana, they can just Zacian you again. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it isn't like you can out heal it. And then so if you want to try and take sort of not build around the counter, you want to lean into your other attack. That's just 3 for 170. And if you put in three reds on somewhere, I'm sure you can be doing better than 170. So I don't know. It just seems.
Yeah,
so you carry on.
Like, if you're leaning into the selling point, you're then also playing non-consistency cards like everywhere. You're playing a bunch of Hyper Potion or Malolanas, and then you're just like an inconsistent mess, really.
Like it just doesn't seem like it's a lot easier when you just go max potion, bang, like, you know what I mean? Yeah. Which you can't do now. Jack, what are your thoughts on Cinderace?
There's so many better red Pokemons. I don't have anything more to say because you've said everything I would say. Like, if you want to build a fire deck, there's so many better fire decks out there.
Yeah.
So and that's my 2 cents. It's just not good enough.
Load of rubbish. Sorry, lad. I do like Cinderace as well. I think if I'm going to find myself playing a Cinderace deck, it's probably going to be the baby one, in all fair. You know what I mean? So yeah, let's keep on the sort of start of VMAXs. Now, Inteleon was a card. I looked at it and I thought, this is rubbish. I'm never going to play this. After playing Malamar, though, I thought, Inteleon could go into this same green engine where you're playing stuff like your hammers, you're playing your counter gains, you're playing all that stuff. And let me tell you, that Grand Bullet, if you can stamp them to 4, you put 160 on the board, you're sniping something else for 60, you can line up some absolutely bonkers boss's orders turns. Like, I've done 5 price turns, 4 price turns, happy days. And then the top attack, just for 1, and put an energy, return it to the hand, I think it goes to hand, is also pretty good. With that being said, I can't see it being a high tier threat. It's fun. You win games just from being super disruptive. In my opinion, that and Malamar are very similar, where I think if you're sort of going the greens route, I've seen people do Frostmoth. I haven't played Frostmoth, so I didn't put it on here. The one I've put here is my sort of greens, but I guess they're very similar in that sense. But Oh, no, it's just like a more offensive Malamar. Joe, well, have you looked into Inteleon much? What are you feeling about it?
Yeah, it's actually one of the cards I got like the most heat for after rating it very poorly in my set review. A lot of people were like, I can't believe you've rated this so low. It's actually going to be a real threat in the game.
Okay.
Look what it can do. You can take away an energy from Dragapult early or from ADP early, and like, why are they active? Like they're just
yes, this is true. Yeah.
Why are they active turn 2 unless they've already like done the thing they wanted to do? Trying to like weave in more hammers or more spread stuff to make both of these attacks seem a little bit better is like reasonable, I guess. Like Zigzagoon pushes that 60 to a 70, which is obviously a good number for a bunch of reasons.
Yeah.
Trying to put in Crushing Hammers to make your 60 attack actually more reasonable seems like okay.
Yeah.
But it sounds like a lot of non-traditional, non-consistency cards in a stage 1, maybe even multiple stage 1 deck.
Yeah.
And it's like so much work when you could be doing such easier stuff
that's
more effective. And at the end of the day, like the selling point of its main attack, like the main attack is fine, but Dragapult can do that for 1 less energy, and it's like 30 less damage, basically.
Yes, 30 to that. Yeah. 30
less active and 10 less to the bench, and that 10 is never wasted because you're placing counters. So like for 1 less energy, it's such a big difference in 1 energy. So yeah, I can't see it being good.
Yeah, no, that's fair. Jack, what are you feeling?
Yeah, I agree. It feels like a worse Dragapult. It feels like it's got less flexibility. It's got a worse engine. It's got worse non-EX options. I think it's just a strictly worse Dragapult.
Yeah, no, that's completely fair. Like when in the games I have been playing, like I said, I've been playing greens. I haven't played Frostmoth. I don't feel as if Frostmoth is worth playing. Like you said, it doesn't do enough, in my opinion, to warrant Frostmoth. I feel as if you have to be weaving in something else, more disruption, which is what I've gone down the greens sort of reset stand, that kind of well. I think the first attack, like you said, Joe, I've rarely used that for good effect in the games I've been playing. Like, I don't know why people are harping on about as if that's the best bit of the card. I feel as if hand lock, if you want energy disruption, weave it in via hammers. I don't feel as if you're using that. Like, I think you're just wasting turns, in my opinion. Like if we're gonna get this big hefty Vmax out, let's not be doing 60 damage now, lads. Let's be doing something else. And I feel if you can weave in a little bit of hand lock with maybe a couple hammer flips here and there whilst doing the big spread, I think it's decent. That being said, I don't think it's particularly great either. It's fun. It was a fun deck to play and a fun deck to build. But that being said, like I look at these decks now on this tier list, and I'm thinking, I don't know, you're relying on a lot of stuff going your way for it to do well. I'm not sure. Like I said, it is fun though, and it's a deck I'll definitely build and play. With that being said, I look at tier 3. I think it is better than tier 3. I definitely can't put it in the same tier as Toxicity. So I'm thinking lower end of a tier 0.5, like a 2.75. Does that seem like a fair sort of placement?
Yeah, 2.53.
Yeah, I think it's probably, in my opinion, it's probably better than Malamar. So I would say 2.5 just to keep it on a par with Malamar.
That's fair.
Vmax. But
they are very similar decks. Yeah.
You're getting into real.
Yeah, we don't want to nitpick too much. It's fine.
Yeah, I think in there is fun. Like, it is fun though. I will sleeve it up. Like, you'll see me at some League Cup. Like, Shay, what are you playing? Intel, like, Shay, come on now, bro. Like, it's a Shay deck all over. It is. But I'm not gonna be like Shay of 2 years ago. We'll be trying to convince you boys now. It's tier 1. You do what's it? But now I've grown up, I've matured a little bit. Like, okay, I might enjoy it. That doesn't necessarily mean it's good. Right, so speaking of decks that I feel will be in the sort of 2.53 range, let's knock Macargo out. Now, last format, Sword and Shield, it was around, it could sort of weld of attach, crush and charge, bish, bash, bosh, here's that energy, buff, see you later. That being said, I haven't actually given Macargo much thought in this new meta, in all honesty. I don't like Dragapult being in format because it can just ping away your smooth overs like there's no tomorrow. Joe, have you given much Macargo thought?
That's exactly my fear of this deck. Just Dragapult ruining your engine is quite a worry. So I think Macargo, like in current format, isn't really higher than like 2.
Yeah, that's fair.
I don't think it's like so much worse that it drops down much further. So I'd still keep it around that 2 area.
Yeah,
it's still like okay against ADP and other Zacian lists. It's okay against some of the tag teams. So And it's actually like okay against like Toxtricity and stuff because its natural output is pretty good. So I'd keep it in that sort of 2 category, but there is that sort of like word of warning that Magcargo is way less safe now because of Gust and because of Dragapult in general.
Yeah. Jack, have you given much Magcargo for?
I mean, the only thought I've given it is the fact that, like we said, the smooth overs are so much less safe, and that's kind of the deck's engine. It can still output numbers, but I think in a similar reason as to why the Magcargo Mill variants are worse, because their engine is much less safe now. I think Magcargo is much less safe.
I think that seems pretty sensible. With that all being said, I think I'm going to leave it. I'm going to put it in tier 2. Like we said, like, because it is consistent. Like it has the potential to uptrade, but like we said, Dragapult could be a big bad scary geezer. But I don't think I look at the 2.5 decks and I can't put Magcargo and Darkbox in the same tier. Like I can't do that, so I'm gonna leave it in tier 2. Or Tangrowth as well. Tangrowth is 2.5, so I can't put Magcargo that bad. But word of warning though, that could be a scary deck to pilot. Let's have a gander. So, Joe, this one we sort of free-won a little bit, and it's something that I want to converse with you a little bit more. Now, I, today, time of recording, put up a Luxray deck. This is the Luxray that has Raid, attacks for 1, does 160, that's very good. But in that deck, I played 2 Zapdos, and I did say in the video that I think there is potential to there be a Zapdos deck standalone with maybe a little bit of Luxray sprinkled in. Now, with that being said, number one, Joe, my first question is Zapdos back on the map? If that's the case, if yes, how good is it? And then sort of whereabouts would you place it?
Okay, so I don't think Zapdos is like... It's not good enough to be its own thing. It definitely needs a partner because its damage output has got a lot worse. So finding partners is going to be the first challenge, but I do like the tempo that we can have with Scoop Up Nets and with Boss's Orders and with Speed Lightning Energy. It does gain a lot of inherent toys to play with, which is really cool. So any excuse, I'll try and play Zapdos for sure. And it's like you say, it's if you're going to try and have some gimmicky like Oranguru plus Luxio into Luxray for some like higher damage output and have Zapdos as the like interim / early game option. Or whether we go back to traditional Ultra Beasts for some power spike turns, or even possibly having some 2 prizes splashed in, like the likes of Coco V and stuff like that, instead to still take use out of some of those Prism Stars. I think those are all pretty valid. I like the tempo that Zapdos still has. Jirachi is still one of the most played cards in the game, so just choosing early game prizes and then moving on to other attackers seems valid just for racing in general. So I think it's kind of like on the map, but it's going to be a trial and error to see what the best backup is for it. Instinctively, I don't ever want to put it like above tier 2 right now, but I think it'll work a lot more than most of these tier 2.5 decks.
That's fair,
in general. So like just on that alone, I'd put it towards the 2 area rather than like lower than that. If you're naturally playing the Scoop Up Net stuff as well, you can put in the little Jirachi Prism Star and cheese some prizes, because when your damage output isn't that high, maybe just like gusting into Dene for 3 prizes, that can offset a lot. So like that sounds pretty good. So yeah, I think around like the tier 2 category, just for like tempo and then a range of attackers that we need to figure out in the meantime.
Yeah, that seems sensible. Jack, have you given as much Zapdos thought?
I mean, nothing more than that really. It seems like you just need to find the way to make it good enough. Zapdos has really struggled ever since it lost Guzma and Escape Rope, and that still kind of is the case, but we have better Gusting now, we have Scoop Up Net now, we have a various array of options of trying to emanate how good Zapbeast was. It will never be that good again, I don't think, but it might just be good enough, like we say, with the tempo that it gains from doing one energy attacks that do a fair amount, building up something for the late game. It could be good enough to match sort of Goons or some of the Mewtwo decks. Sort of power level.
Yeah, I think looking at how the tier list has panned out, I think 2 seems quite sensible there for sure. I hated Zapdos as a deck back in the day. I hated it, but I have to respect it. How? Jack? How, Jack? You're looking at no camera one. Let me tell you why. Because I used to play Grand Ball a lot. This is where I used to love playing Grand Ball. And I think, this is fine. If I put a bodybuilding dumbbell and like 3 E powers. And you know what annoyed me the most? If I had that Grand Ball, it get to the point, Jack, where that Grand Ball had 3 energy and I was doing giant fangs because they weren't hitting it. They were going around it every bastard turn. Oh, it stressed me out. Oh, so let's not get Jack, I'm trying to be nice and calm, but no. Either
The worst part was
So-
it was Joe that said how.
Yeah, sorry, mate.
But
Oh, was it? Sorry, my bad.
I agree with your sentiment. That beast was
We both loved that.
busted there.
No, I'm saying you can love it. Don't get me wrong. I respect clowns as a deck, and I'm sure everyone that plays it, they enjoy playing it. I got a lot of heat on Twitter the other day, but don't get me wrong. I'm not saying it's a bad deck. I just hate it. I can hate a deck, can't I? I don't have to like a deck, but I know it's good. Oh, it just stressed me out every turn. I'm gonna do it all out, and you're gonna hit this snubble. Of course you are. And then they'd line up the Coco. It was like clockwork. It used to really annoy me. I'm like, here comes the Coco turn. Oh, what a surprise. Oh, anyway. Let's keep in this electric. We've got 2 electric decks here left. More Pekko. Now I've put more Pekko there and Pasha. You don't really narrow it down like that. I'm not sure if I'm going down an electric route or if I'm going leaning more into the Vmax. But what I do believe that there was this guy in the Neil Pie Open. Shout out to you if you're watching. But I'm sure it was like Stefan sort of popularised it a little bit as well. I think he did some articles and it caught a little bit of win. But it was like a more Pekko with a 2/2. Vmax with some Coco V's dotted in. Joe, are you familiar with that sort of deck that was knocking about?
I'm not super familiar with it, to be honest. If it's just the V approach, I don't like it at all because we have better gust, so hit and run doesn't sound smart.
Yep.
But if we're going for the Vmax, I don't see what changes in this format that would make it better.
Yes. Yeah.
So I would instinctively not give it much credit right now.
No, that's fair.
Toxtricity seems to take the mantle of probably like best lightning Vmax, so I wouldn't rate it high at all. Between 3 and LOL, in all honesty, just because there's better gust in the format now.
Yeah, no, that's fair. Jack, do you agree?
Yeah, I agree. I actually played against the Vmax build in the Limitless Open. I won't say what happened, but it's going to be on the channel soon. It's a game.
Okay.
I think the deck is basically wiped off because of bosses orders being printed. I think there's no reason to really play it when we have 1, 2, 3, potentially maybe even 4 better lightning decks. Hit and run was in my mind, the only selling point of the Vmax line. The Vmax was big and chunky, and spread, but we have better spread options now.
Yeah.
And hit and run is not going to be an archetype again, and while we've got bosses orders, because we just can get around the hit and run strategy. So
yeah,
I think more Pico is pretty irrelevant now.
Yeah, especially when the hit and run strategy revolves around the 2 prize, right? Like if there was like an interim, like a Donphan-esque 1 prize that was doing between 60 and 100, 120 potentially, because I'm sure you were there in the stream, weren't you, Joe? And I was playing the ADP and Tellion, and I was playing against the more Pekko doll, and if you can just summon up the gust and take multiple prizes every turn, I was just like, what? The custom catch a KO, the deck falls apart, and now. And that deck was built to find custom catches every turn, but now every deck is gonna have at least 2 bosses orders. It's like, so
for sure.
So I think I'm gonna lol it. I actually am. I'm gonna lol it. Sorry, mate. Like you're a little cute geezer. Don't get me wrong. And then in the Nuzlocke, I'm actually currently using the more Pekko. And it's a load of rubbish as well. Don't get me wrong. But you're rubbish in the game, and you're rubbish here, unfortunately, as well. ADP Coco. This is a deck that had a very, very brief flash in the pan. And I think, Joe, if I remember, I think you were playing it for a stream once. I'm sure I managed to catch you trying it or building it for a stream. Am I correct in that assumption? You did play it a little bit, right?
Yeah, I played it early just because Tord tweeted and had it in his tier list. So I had to give it some experimentation.
Yes, yeah.
I don't think it gains really anything from the new set that makes me think it's like far better or far worse. So it's about where it was before, which is, about 2.5, 3 area. It's the same syndrome as Milotic. Like, this could just be Zacian.
Yeah, that's that's the kind of route I was hoping you go towards. Like, yeah, if we're playing ADP, let's put it with Zacian, lads. Like, let's not beat around the bush, or even a Copperage if you really want to go down that route. Jack, does that feel sensible to you?
Yeah, pretty much. I think it's no better than ADP Milotic, to be fair. And I think Spiritomb is just a better.
True.
If you don't want to play Zacian, then play Spiritomb, because again, it's just better. So
That's fair, yeah.
Points at least.
That's it, yeah. So you've got 2 potential ADP partners before we get into Coco, guys. So let's not be messing around. We've actually got 2 decks here left. We've got 2 decks left now. Almost there, Fez, almost there. But these 2 decks potentially, they've had their flash in the pan still. Let's start off with Straight Mally. Now, Straight Mally. It's funny because I always hear there's the Straight Mally crowd. Like, I'm sure, like, my friend Dimitri, shout out to you if you're listening. He quoted as always saying, in this meta, if it attacks, Mally has a favourable matchup. I was like, here's Prickle. I played Mally for 2 years, and that's questionable. Like, let's set up first. But with that being said, I saw it on Twitter as well. Someone was like, "Oh, what in this meta has a positive matchup against X, Y, and Z?" About 3 people all said Mally. I'm thinking, does it? Okay. I like you said. Well, I guess in theory, you've got your Clear Vision for ADP, and you've got Giratina Spam. You've got what else like that? Play Espers and all that good stuff. With that being said, Joe, like Malamar, it always hangs about a little bit. It does. Does it still hang about like a sort of straight Giratina-esque type thing? Is it still hanging about?
I mean, it's a little bit worried about people's answers to Dragapult might include things like Malolana and Scoop Up Net to undo some of this damage. And when a deck's set up damage based, you kind of get caught in the crossfire, which is a bit worrying. But I actually think this is going to be one of the decks that can freely boss's orders more than many other decks. Like, from turn 3 onwards, the board's there.
Yep.
So you're free to Stellar Wish for boss and replay that Giratina and ping things off. Mally was certainly it was in the top 3 decks when during Guzma eras for a while, just because it can Guzma more than other decks because it's already done its setup in the prior turns, and then you're picking off things at will, really. So boss's orders is great for so many decks, but Malamar is actually one of the better abusers of boss. Just for when you're rolling. So I think it's a little bit worried about some Malolana creeping back into the meta, but boss's orders is actually like a really big win for Squids overall. I still don't think its placement is necessarily like that good, but it's still like a nice foil to Blounds. It's pretty good against some tag team based decks still. Your mill matchup gets slightly better with some Gust in there finally. But I'd still expect to lose it more often than not. So, around that tier 2, tier 1.5 kind of zone for me, I would say.
Ooh, okay. Jack, do you echo that sentiment?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's like a mill. It'll never go away. And again, it can use boss's orders probably better than any deck. It preferred Guzma, obviously. Yeah. Because you're all bench based, but it might be good enough. Like, boss's orders might be good enough to be able to include it, knowing that they're not consistency cards, knowing that if you do hit them in the right order, you win more. And Malamar, it in that kind of situation, it's not a win more card; it's a win card, and that's what Mally needs. I'd be scared. I'm scared to put Mally anywhere because you will always be wrong to someone. But I think I agree that it's probably only mid tier right now because I think it's also kind of scared of some of the Dragapult decks as well. Anyway, being able to take out Inkays and Malamars fairly efficiently, take out Jirachis fairly efficiently. So I think it gains a couple of scary matchups as well, but it's probably still good enough to do well with. And again, it feels like another deck that if you know what you're doing with the matchups, then you can probably beat players that have written the deck off, because you'll be putting every single counter correctly, and you like in a lot of Mally games you need to place every single counter correctly. Placing one counter incorrectly can lose you the game. Every single counter matters in Mally. So it's similar to Ultimate Mewtwo, where if people commit time to it and learn the matchups, it gets way better for players individually, even no matter where it is on the tier list.
Okay, that's a lot more positive from than I was expecting, to be fair. But like you said though, like being able to, I didn't even comprehend this. This is why I have to get players that are better than me and know the game more on these sort of videos. Because if it was me, I wouldn't even comprehend that how good Boss Lords is Mali. Like you said, once you've got 2 Malis out, now I have played this for the longest of time. Malamar, when it gets 3 Malis out, is one of the best decks in format. Like, it's just insane that you can just have so much control over the game, and then moving like in formats prior after Guzma. You're really stuck with having 1 great catcher or maybe 2. You can't really fit a full 4 customs. But now I'm thinking about it in my head. Yeah, being able to just like I want to hit this right now. Boop, there you go. And like, yeah, that does seem interesting to me. This is very true. With that being said, let's look at the tier list now. I'm tempted by a low 1.5. That's what I'm thinking. Does that sound sensible?
I'd lean more towards 2 because one of the bigger selling points still of this format is that you can punish Mewtwo players, and I feel like that's dropping off quite a lot. That's fair.
So a sort of high 2. Yeah. Again, it seems. Let's pop him just before the Mewtwo. Oh, hold on, what's happened there? No Obstagoon. Where were you? No, yeah, that was fine. Yeah, I'm trying to cheat you out to 1.5, cheeky geese. I see you. That's on the slide. Okay, then the last deck we've got here to rank. Your sort of Metal Zacian. Now, it's one of those, I always found Metal to be that sort of edgy pick. If you thought he was too cool for ADP, let's bust out the Metal. You know, having that energy denial aspect is nice. Being able to turn Zacians into the super tanks is also fun. And I guess potentially with Welder, but might drop up a little bit. It could be a bit better. I'm not sure. I know it had a little bit of success with Celia's network. I know he's been championing it as recently as well. With that being said, I haven't given it much thought, Rebel Clash, not going to lie. I haven't piloted the deck enough to know. Jack, have you given Metal much thought?
Not too much, because I still think it's probably strictly the worst Zacian build.
Okay.
Interestingly, I don't know about Luca Metal Zacian in general, but Luca Metal making Copperage's tankier, I think it is potentially just better, because Zacians still have still are only 220 HP plus minus the however much it takes. That's a lot of minuses, but it's still overcomable. But Copperage having 340 minus the damages, I can see that being probably a bit of a tankier build if you want to go down that route. It feels like Luca Metal wants to be pulled in so many different directions that it doesn't really know where it's going. So I don't know how good that makes it. I think the other aspect of Luca Metal was the fact that you didn't need to GX early. You could be the Turbozation build. Yeah. But it now seems like Turbozation is just better. It is just its own deck now. Maybe that even plays a single Luca Metal, I don't know. But I think pure tankization probably isn't as good. We said with Copperage, it's probably better to be doing more damage than reducing damage right now. So I think Luca Metal is kind of just not as good as the aggressive Zacian builds.
Yeah, that seems fair. Joe, have you given much Luca Metal thought?
Yeah, I have to be fair as well. Just because I was naturally looking at the Turbozation, I was thinking about this list as well, because 230 is still good enough just to get through the things before they evolve. So yeah, I'm interested in that for sure. I think hammers can certainly punish straight Dragapults, as we expect them to be the most popular early on. Just having hammers and your GX attack available can certainly punish those decks, which is really cool. So I do respect this list a decent amount. I think you are still worried about the Blowns and the Mills and stuff like that. Potentially weaving in, again, our favourite meme of the Scoop Up Net Jirachi Prism Star to be your solution for that. But normally if you're committing spaces to hammers, you probably won't have space for that sort of fun stuff. So yeah. I think if we're expecting it to be similar to how it is now, its meta placement is still in a similar vein, where it's kind of in that 1.5 category. We put it below the other Zacians just because at the end of the day we want to take the prize cards quicker to win the game. Yeah. And the slower approach does get punished at times. But another thing to note is that cards like Hammer and cards like Malolana naturally seem to be stronger in this format. So that's a good thing going for the deck, to be fair.
Okay, that's interesting. Okay, that all seems sensible. So I think we're all in agreement that it's definitely not in the same tier as the other Zacian, but I don't think it ever has been. And I don't think it. I'm moving forward. I don't think it will. I think Speed Zacian is by far obviously a lot better. I think ADP. So for me, the sort of question is, how big is that discrepancy between the other Zacians? We've got the other two Zacians in S. I don't think it's good enough to be tier 1, tier 1.5. So let's look at the other 1.5. Like, we've got a Dragapult one in there. I'm feeling, is tier 2 too low? I'm not really sold on Luke, man. I never really have been. Like, is that not respecting it enough? Do you reckon, Jack?
I think I'd probably go lower end of 1.5. I've played a little bit of Luke Metal. I've actually played like ADP Luke Metal, and Luke Metal as a card in general is just good in this kind of format. So I think it's probably 1.5. I don't think it's worse than stuff like Malamar. I don't. Maybe it's not much better. Maybe 1.52. Maybe 2 is fair. It's probably no better than Malamar. So I agree with 2. That feels fair, I guess.
Yeah, Joe, do you think 2 is a bit too harsh, or is that about right?
It's either top of 2 or low end of 1.5 for me. I prefer it in 1.5 just as a personal preference, because Zacian means you're more consistent than a lot of the rest of 2.
Yeah, that's fair.
That would be my only real kicker argument for putting it in 1.5.
It's fair.
Okay. No, I hear you, but I'm still putting him in 2 though. Like,
I mean, that's
it's not far apart there. So, right, it looks like them boys. We have ranked them all. Bit of a slog what we got there. Thank you so much for coming on as always. So I think the red list looks like a pretty good place. If you want to sort of quit, like I'm sure all you people already, or YouTube people just skip to the end and screenshot anyway. I know what you geezers are like, but this is like a pretty sensible place to start the Rebel Clash format. This is very good. A lot of decks in there. Rebel Clash, like I know Rebel Clash at face value, it might not be adding the most super high tier. Like, we've only really added Dragapult, but if you look at that sort of meaty 2.52, like there's a lot of decks in there now. So let's get brushed up on those decks. Find your favourite one and let's go have some fun. Because if anything like me, I never touch the 1s and the S's anyway. I don't know why. I just don't like that. But thank you two for coming on. So much appreciated. As always, the floor is now yours, my friends. You know, all your shout outs, all that good stuff. The floor is yours.
After you, Joe.
Well, we're basically plugging the same things for the most part.
Yeah,
yeah, that's true.
CCG on Facebook, also Omnipoke on Facebook, Team Omnipoke on Twitch, and Omnipoke on YouTube is basically all the socials that I can remember. And Jack's got any more if I forgot any.
That's pretty much it. Just look out for more Rebel Clash stuff. I think me and Joe are going to be doing a lot of Rebel Clash decks, and obviously all of the Limitless events are coming up, so it's not like we don't have events to be thinking about. So yeah, keep an eye out for stuff, and yeah, as Joe said, CCG as well for meta-analysis updates after the Limitless events, because it's always good to work out what the next play is, and that's how we like to do it.
That's all well and good. Like I said, we said Omnipoke. They can be. Was it the content creators vote for the Limitless guys? And so if you really like me, go vote for them. You can't vote for me anyway, but go vote for Omnipoke. That's who I voted for, and I would love to see you guys in there representing us content creators. I want to see you guys in there because I think you guys are the best ones in my opinion. Not gonna lie. So yeah, so thank you guys for coming on, but most of all thank you guys at home for watching, because if it weren't for you guys, I wouldn't be sitting here for like 2 hours talking about Pokemon. I'd just be, I know what I mean. So thank you guys for watching. So yeah, that's been Rebel Clash tiered list video. Oh my lord, that's me a while to get that out. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you all next time.